Chapter 506. To Zhang Xiaohua, coming to Rejuvenation Valley was definitely a coincidence. He never thought that he would be able to stay here for half a year. Furthermore, thinking about the rewards he had gained here, it could be said that it was fruitful. It was more pleasing to the eye than the fruits of autumn. Thinking about it, the art of alchemy, the art of making weapons, the art of alchemy, the heavenly Tao of the human body, the meridian-nourishing pill, the jade water sword. Just thinking about it made Zhang Xiaohua want to cover his mouth and laugh. However, was this all that he had gained? Looking at the clouds in the azure sky, Zhang Xiaohua could not help but feel disappointed. Faintly, he felt that he had not included the most important thing in his calculations. But how could he include her in his calculations? He almost could not grasp his own thoughts. It was more difficult than comprehending the heavenly Tao. Perhaps he would have an explanation today. After all, he was leaving early in the morning. Zhang Xiaohua thought so. Unexpectedly, Nie Qianyu, who usually came to Zhang Xiaohua's place when she had nothing to do, did not show up for the entire afternoon. It was as if she did not realize that Zhang Xiaohua was leaving the next day. Zhang Xiaohua did not have much to pack. After staying outside the alchemy room for a while, he returned. He sat cross-legged and pondered over the mantra to conceal his cultivation. This was too important. The scene of him encountering the incense order's emissary, Lord Kong, was still fresh in his mind. He did not think that this seemingly cold Lord Kong was simply testing his martial arts. If not for the fact that his actual strength was far beyond what he had shown, that simple palm strike would have seriously injured him. But to be able to trick the Yahuandan pill out of a simple bite of the tongue was really out of his expectations. This Lord Kong, cough cough, was really rich and imposing. Zhang Xiaohua did not know that Peacock, who was sitting cross-legged on the white blanket, was also deep in thought. She could not suppress the irritation in her heart. Peacock really did not know why she had lost her composure. This Zhang Xiaohua was just an ordinary disciple of the pugilistic world. His looks were average and his figure was thin. No matter where she looked from, there was no reason for her to be attracted to him. The cult of incense never forbade its disciples from having feelings for each other. Peacock was a typical example amongst the inner disciples, and it was unknown how many of the elites in the sect secretly admired her. But the female disciples of the cult of incense were mostly indifferent towards feelings, and Peacock was the same. So, until now, there had not been a formal or suitable disciple who could make her fall in love. But today, on an ordinary afternoon, a sunny afternoon, an ordinary medicine boy, a youth who was said to be only 15 years old, actually made her feel like he was the only one in the world. This was simply impossible, simply inconceivable. That faint smile, that neither servile nor overbearing salute, and that instant of warmth when their palms touched, caused a great wave of emotions to surge through Peacock's heart. The humble way of addressing her as little one, the lowly status of medicine boy, and the flattering recommendation from Valley Head Nie and the others made Peacock's heart burn with a strong sense of shame and anger. Whether this shame and anger was directed at Zhang Xiaohua or herself, she could not tell. At the same time, the trace of blood at the corner of Zhang Xiaohua's mouth caused her to feel a faint pain in her heart, but also a trace of satisfaction. Sigh. Peacock let out a long sigh. She lifted her eyes to look out the window at the setting sun. She thought to herself, "Entering the world, is this entering the world? I have been practicing martial arts with all my heart, hoping to see the truth of the world. I do not want to be shackled by worldly affairs. But Master forced this mission to leave the valley on me. He wants me to enter the world to train myself, hoping that I will be able to gain something from this short journey. But this simple journey to Rejuvenation Valley has caused me to encounter such an inexplicable dilemma. Could it be that this young man is destined to be?" Peacock's face blushed slightly under the veil. She shook her head to herself. "That may not be the case. This brat is only 15 years old. He is supposed to be Rejuvenation Valley's son-in-law. Why would I want to snatch him for no reason? It's so boring. It must be a coincidence that made me feel this way. I can only say that my worldly fate has yet to be fulfilled and I still have something in my heart. With this explanation in her heart, Peacock's heart calmed down slightly. That must be it. Why else would the feeling I had when I first saw him be different from later on? If there is fate, this feeling should not change. Rejuvenation Valley, Peach Blossom Forest, Peach Blossom Nunnery. Nye Qianyu stared blankly at the peach trees outside the window. The brilliant peach blossoms of spring had long turned into spring mud. Countless peaches had borne fruit. But where was the fruit she wanted? Nye Qianyu's eyes looked at the peach blossom forest. Her mind kept flashing back to the days and nights she spent with Zhang Xiaohua. Many details she thought she had long forgotten were inadvertently recalled at this moment. But the more she thought about it, the more bitter she felt. An unintentional encounter was going to end tomorrow. A fate that had a beautiful beginning but did not have a perfect ending. Was this what it meant to be fated but not meant to be? Picking up the comb on the table, Nye Qianyu unconsciously combed her dark hair. This was usually done by Little Orange, but now it was the best way for Nye Qianyu to sort out her worries. However, it was easy to comb her hair but difficult to untie her feelings. Not to mention the thousands of knots that had been tied in her heart. Perhaps only he could untie these knots with his own hands. Not far away, Little Orange worriedly looked at the young miss who was looking out the window while combing her hair. She did not know how to comfort her. Ever since she came back last night, Nye Qianyu had been so listless. It was as if her entire soul was outside. Last night at the banquet to welcome the incense cult, there was some laughter, but the rest of the time she was like this. Alas, who could understand Nye Qianyu's thoughts better than her? Who could truly understand Nye Qianyu's feelings? In an instant, the back of a young man holding a long sword with boundless momentum appeared in Little Orange's mind. That back was so attractive that her eyes were firmly glued to it. For a long, long time, she was unwilling to look away. While she was lost in thought, the sound of the stairs creaking suddenly came from below. Little Orange turned her head and saw Valley Master Nye walking up the stairs. Little Orange saw him, and quickly bowed. She was about to greet Nye Qianyu when Valley Master Nye quickly waved his hand and shook his head gently. Little Orange saw this and worriedly looked at Nye Qianyu before carefully retreating. Valley Master Nye walked lightly to Nye Qianyu's side. Looking at his beloved daughter's empty eyes and frozen expression, his heart ached. He sighed softly. Little you, little you. It was not until he called her 3 times that Nye Qianyu came back to her senses. Seeing that it was her father, she quickly said, When did father come? After she finished speaking, she was about to stand up and bow. Valley Master Nye held her shoulders and smiled. Father also just came in. You should sit down. As he spoke, Valley Master Nye also sat down on the ground beside Nye Qianyu. Father! Nye Qianyu looked at her father's behavior, and her small mouth was a bit flat. In Nye Qianyu's memory, when her mother had just passed away, her father would always casually sit beside her like this and look at her lovingly, whether it was reading medicine books or doing needlework. However, as she grew older and the affairs in the valley became more and more busy, her father had not sat beside her like this for a long time. Valley Master Nye smiled kindly and reached out to stroke his daughter's hair. Little you have grown up. Father is also old. Alas, but there are some things that I can't do for you. Although I really want to, but you still have to rely on yourself. Ren Xiaoyao. I know that what I want to do can only end here. He was extremely unwilling to say the 3 words, Ren Xiaoyao, here for fear that it would affect his daughter's feelings. Fortunately, when Nye Qianyu heard it, her eyes only reddened and she did not have much of a reaction. She also sighed. Father, I understand what you mean. When you asked Big Brother Ren to stay and promised to send him to the fragrant religion, I already knew. He is a person of unknown origin. If you didn't want to give me a chance and give him a favor, how could you recommend him to the fragrant religion? After all, he is brother-in-law's cousin. Back then, Uncle Yu personally looked for you and you didn't agree. This is putting the lifeline of our Rejuvenation Valley on the line. Valley Master Nye smiled bitterly. I originally wanted to repay Ren Xiaoyao's kindness in escorting you back. I also wanted to send him to the fragrant religion and then use our Rejuvenation Valley's elixirs and alchemy skills to create conditions for you. Who knew, alas, this Ren Xiaoyao and this Beta's school actually returned to our Rejuvenation Valley something that far exceeded what we gave him. In this way, recommending him to the fragrant religion would not be obvious, and Valley Master Nye solemnly took out a jade bottle from his bosom and handed it to Nye Qianyu, saying, "And this Ren Xiaoyao actually refined the legendary Crimson Flame elixir and only kept one for himself. The other 5 were all given to our Rejuvenation Valley." Eh? Nye Qianyu was a little surprised and then smiled. "I don't find it strange that Big Brother Ren can refine the Crimson Flame elixir. He seems to be a deity, and there is nothing he can't do. I didn't go to the pill room at noon for the same reason. However, Big Brother Ren has never suffered losses. Why did he change his mind this time and only keep one for himself?" Valley Master Nye smiled. "Why don't you think about it?" Looking at her father's half-smile, Nye Qianyu blushed and said in a voice as small as a mosquito, "Is it for me? What do you think?" Valley Master Nye still asked in return. A trace of spirit appeared in Nye Qianyu's eyes. "Then he should have given it to me personally. Why did he have to go through father's hands?" Valley Master Nye smiled. "How would father know the thoughts of a young man? Perhaps he is thin-skinned. In any case, I advised him to keep the elixir for his brother, but he said to give it to the person who needs it the most." Then his smile became even wider, saying, "But in this Rejuvenation Valley, who needs to improve their skills the most?" Valley Master Nye had thought that Nye Qianyu would laugh through her tears and even blame him shyly after hearing these words. However, when Nye Qianyu heard these words, her face instantly paled and there was some despair in her eyes. She bit her lips and didn't say a word. Valley Master Nye thought to himself, "Oh no, I don't know what I said wrong?" -3. Chapter 507. Valley Head Nye originally wanted to comfort his daughter by saying that Zhang Xiaohua wanted to leave the Crimson Flame pill for Nye Qianyu to increase her power. However, Nye Qianyu's expression changed drastically. Valley Head Nye forced a smile and said, "What's wrong? Little you, did I say something wrong?" After a long while, Nye Qianyu said in a low voice, "Brother Rin is right. I am the one who needs to increase my power the most in Rejuvenation Valley. However, father, with my martial arts, even if I take the Crimson Flame pill, I will not be able to catch up to you. How can I accompany Brother Rin to roam the pugilistic world?" Valley Head Nye laughed and said, "You want to roam the pugilistic world just like that?" Nye Qianyu said shyly, "Why not? Brother Ren's martial arts are so high. If I can't be on par with him, how can I? Ha! If 1 Crimson Flame pill is not enough, we will take 2. If 2 is not enough, we will take 3. Valley Head Nye said generously. "Alas!" Nye Qianyu sighed. Although her face was still red, she said, "Father, you don't have to comfort me. This medicinal pill is only effective for the first time. It's useless to take more. I don't believe that you don't know this." Valley Head Nye's face was a little awkward. Cough, cough, it is better to take it than not. This is Brother Ren's good intention. You should accept it." After he finished speaking, he was about to put the jade bottle into Nye Qianyu's hands. However, Nye Qianyu shook her head and pushed the jade bottle back. She said in a low voice, "Father, don't deceive me. You are the one who planned to take the Crimson Flame pill." Valley Head Nye was stunned but said, "No, my Crimson Flame pill is in the pill room." Then, looking at Nye Qianyu's somewhat reproachful eyes, he shook his head and said, "Little you, sometimes being too smart may not be a good thing." Sigh. Nye Qianyu looked out of the window and said, "Brother Rin has always been clear about public and private matters. If he wanted to give it to me, he would definitely leave one for me. Since he gave all the pills to father, it naturally means that he gave them to Rejuvenation Valley. Perhaps everyone in Rejuvenation Valley needs the Crimson Flame pill to increase their power, but only I don't. Because 5 years of power is completely meaningless to a weak girl like me who has yet to achieve martial arts. Don't think so, father. Valley Master Nye didn't speak. He quietly looked at his daughter, who had regained her composure. Nye Qianyu continued. Father's internal strength has been stuck at a bottleneck in recent years and has not been able to improve for a long time. Although the method of circulating internal strength that Big Brother Rin taught is very good, Father's internal strength is still limited and cannot be practiced to perfection. If we can obtain the help of this Crimson Flame pill, success will be achieved naturally and our internal strength will enter a new realm. This method of refining pills will also be successful and our Rejuvenation Valley will be able to refine real pills. And you giving this pill to your daughter is really like trying to put out a burning cart with a cup of water. After Valley Master Nye finished listening to his daughter, his expression was still calm as he softly said, You know, Xiaoyu, ever since your mother passed away, your face has never revealed a true smile. Although sometimes I see you smile very sweetly, Father knows that your heart is not really happy. Although Father knows that going out this time has some risks, on one hand, you want to be strong and have to go. On the other hand, Father also hopes that you can go out and see the outside world so that you can open your heart. During the period when there was no news of you, Father was very distressed and often regretted his decision. I was afraid that something would happen to you. Father has let down your mother who passed away early. But you came back safely. Not only did you fulfill your desire to be strong, you also brought back your laughter. You know, Xiaoyu, Father saw you looking at Rin Xiaoyao with a faint smile. Father was very happy. Although your smile was not as bright as before, Father knew that it came from the bottom of your heart. It was a happy smile. That was how Father felt when I met your mother. So, when Rin Xiaoyao was about to leave the next day, Father agreed to your Uncle Yu's suggestion without hesitation. I know that your Uncle Yu made this suggestion because he was dissatisfied with my rejection back then and wanted to see how I would deal with it. But Xiaoyu, if Father didn't agree, Rin Xiaoyao would leave immediately. I saw your despair and sadness in your eyes. Father would rather lose Rejuvenation Valley than let you be sad. Father only wants you to be happy and happy. Father also hopes that you can have a good start in these 4 to 5 months. Father is also willing to take this risk just for this beautiful start. But Father, I don't look like a fairy and my martial arts are also very weak. Although I have been with Brother Rin for such a long time, I know that his heart is not with me. Valley Master Nye smiled and said, Xiaoyu, it is important for a girl to be beautiful and have excellent martial arts. But these are only a few aspects. You also have intelligence that other girls don't have. This is your strength. You can't compare your shortcomings with other people's strengths. Then he asked, Moreover, does your brother Ren already have a girl he likes? This? Nye Qianyu was a little hesitant. It seems that he does, but it also seems that he doesn't. I don't understand. Valley Master Nye nodded and said, Since you didn't say it clearly, then you don't have one. Xiaoyu, aren't you always strong? Why are you so weak now? Rin Xiaoyao's martial arts is now something that even Father can't understand. If he goes to Chuanxiang religion to study for a few more years, even if he doesn't take the name of Chuanxiang religion, he will still be one of the top in Jianghu. This is a delicious cake. It's rare for you to have the opportunity to be close to him. You must not give up. Father, who is the delicious cake? Who wants to snatch it? Nye Qianyu's face turned red again, full of a little girl's attitude. Seeing his daughter's active mind, Valley Master Nye knew that his words had an effect. So he didn't dare to say more. He took out a jade bottle and said, Xiaoyu, didn't you always want to see Chuanxiang religion's Yuandan pill? Here it is, in this bottle. Really? Nye Qianyu was surprised. Uncle Yang gave it to you? Why didn't he mention it yesterday? Valley Master Nye saw that he had successfully diverted Nye Qianyu's attention and said with a smile, Old Yang, with his appearance, if he had it, he would have taken it out long ago. He is just a steward of the pill opening hall. He always hid it from me, thinking that I don't know. When he came back for the 3rd time, he was drunk and spilled the truth. He just comes out often and his position in the pill opening hall is also ordinary. Steward, it's just a gimmick when he goes out. How could he have the Yawandan pill? Huh! Nie Qianyu was even more surprised. Did the messenger give it to him? But it can't be. The previous messengers were extremely indifferent. They didn't say anything and didn't even let us look at their faces. How could they just give us the Rejuvenation Valley, such a healing medicine? Valley Master Nie blinked. Little you, why don't you guess how I got the Jade Rejuvenation pill? Nie Qianyu shook her head. I only know that it should have been given by the messenger. As for why, I don't know. Ha! Valley Master Nie laughed. You don't know, Master Kong went to the inner valley to play today. When he saw Rin Xiaoyao, he thought of the martial arts competition on the arena and reached out to test him. He accidentally injured Rin Xiaoyao, so he took it out. Without waiting for Valley Master Nie to finish speaking, Nie Qianyu stood up and said urgently, Oh, father, why are you still laughing? Brother Rin is injured, right? How is his injury? Did he take the Yawandan pill? Will he still be able to preach the incense religion tomorrow? Valley Master Nie secretly shook his head at the series of questions. He pulled Nie Qianyu and said with a smile, Xiao Yu, sit down. Your brother Rin is not injured at all. Nie Qianyu was stunned and said, Master Kong took out the Yawandan pill, how can he be fine? Valley Master Nie smiled and told her what happened at noon. Although she knew that Zhang Xiaohua was fine, Nie Qianyu's face still turned pale. Until she heard Zhang Xiaohua shamelessly say, I'm fine, I just bit my lip. She could not help but spit and said with a smile, This guy can't take any losses. Master Kong only tested his skills and he extorted a bottle of Yawandan pill from him. However, she immediately asked with concern, How many pills did Master Kong give Brother Rin? He gave it to Father and Elder Zhang. How many pills does he have? Valley Master Nie waved his hand and said, You said it yourself, this guy can't take any losses. He obviously still has a lot in his bottle, otherwise he would not have given us 2 pills. Alright, I'll give this one to you. You can only protect yourself. If anything happens, you can let Father be at ease. Nie Qianyu smiled and said, No need, Father. I will not leave Rejuvenation Valley. How can I encounter any accidents? You can take it. Valley Master Nie was resolute in not taking it and said, If you don't go out now, you can't guarantee that you won't go out in the future. Don't you still want to roam the Jianghu? Father. Nie Qianyu rebuked and casually took the bottle of Yawandan pill. However, Nie Qianyu immediately felt a bit strange and said, Father, think about it. Why would Master Kong of the incense religion want to test Brother Ren's martial arts? Even if it was a test, she must have a sense of propriety and would not harm Brother Ren. Moreover, even if Brother Ren was not injured, how could Master Kong not see it? These questions made Valley Master Nie speechless. Yes, Valley Master Nie had clearly seen Master Kong's loss of self-control. However, he did not dare to make wild guesses. Secondly, he believed that there was no relationship between Master Kong and Zhang Xiaohua. Thirdly, and most importantly, he did not dare to tell Nie Qianyu about Master Kong's loss of self-control. He was afraid that it would cause Nie Qianyu to misunderstand. How could a girl who was in love have a normal intelligence? If there were any unusual actions because of this, it would not be good for anyone. Therefore, Valley Master Nie also took out the weapon that Zhang Xiaohua was accustomed to using and said with a smile, I don't know about this. However, Nie Qianyu frowned and thought to herself. Valley Master Nie saw this and said, All right, little you, Father will leave now. If you want to know why, you can ask your brother Ren. Perhaps he will know. AI Nie Qianyu sighed. Let me think about it again. Valley Master Nie shook his head and turned to go downstairs. A jade bottle was left at the place where Valley Master Nie had been standing. Come and read more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. -3. Chapter 508. After thinking for a long time, Nie Qianyu still couldn't make up her mind to see Zhang Xiaohua, whose lips were injured. Although she knew that it was better to see one more time, she couldn't summon the courage to face Zhang Xiaohua's ruthless indifference and her own feelings. After all, she was still in her first bloom of love. While thinking, Nie Qianyu's eyes suddenly lit up. She threw the comb far away and shouted, "Xiao Juzi! Xiao Juzi!" When Xiao Juzi hurriedly ran upstairs, Nie Qianyu continued to shout, "Go, go, get my needle and thread." Xiao Juzi was puzzled. She didn't know why Miss suddenly wanted to do needlework. But when she saw Nie Qianyu's excited appearance, she prayed to Buddha in her heart, and hurriedly went to help find the necessary items. In the pill room, Zhang Xiaohua didn't see Nie Qianyu arrive. It was already late. At dusk, dark clouds covered the sky above Rejuvenation Valley. Before long, thunder rumbled and it started to rain. Sitting cross-legged in the pill room, Zhang Xiaohua listened to the familiar sound of thunder outside. She was eager to give it a try. She hadn't attracted thunder for a long time. But when she thought of Official Kong, who was nearby in the outer valley, Zhang Xiaohua immediately extinguished the idea. She would leave for the fragrant religion tomorrow. She couldn't give up on finding her second brother just because she was greedy for a moment of cultivation. The loss outweighed the gain. Zhang Xiaohua continued to comprehend the incantation until midnight. Then she laid down a restriction and began to cultivate the Carefree Heart Sutra. In the rainy night, the raindrops silently moistened everything. But when they hit the windowsills, the roofs, and the trees, countless people in Rejuvenation Valley couldn't sleep. No matter if they were old or young, no matter how profound their skills were, as long as they had worries in their hearts, they were all like this. There were many things to talk about that night, but it was difficult to talk about them. The rain gradually stopped in the early morning, but it was still cloudy. No starlight or morning sun could be seen. Zhang Xiaohua woke up on time. When she opened her eyes, she didn't hear the sound of rain. She couldn't help but smile. The rain has stopped, and the sky is clear. It's a good time to travel. It's a good omen. However, when he put away the restriction and walked out, he suddenly discovered that there were two girls standing at the entrance of his pill room. Their clothes were a little wet, and one of the girls was leading an animal that looked like a donkey, a horse, a deer, and a cow. If they weren't Nie Qianyu and Xiao Juzi, who else could it be? It was already July and August, and the weather was hot. However, Rejuvenation Valley's climate was different. It was like spring all year round. After a night of rain and gusts of cold wind, the morning after the rainy night was a little chilly. In addition, her clothes were a little wet. Nie Qianyu's lips were trembling slightly from the cold. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua felt a slight pain in his heart for no reason. He quickly walked forward and rebuked. "Little you, why are you here so early? Your clothes are wet. Why didn't you call me?" Before Nie Qianyu could say anything, Xiao Juzi behind her said loudly, "Miss has been standing here for an hour. The rain didn't stop. It was inevitable that she would get wet on the way here. Moreover, you slept like a log. I shouted until my throat was broken, but you didn't respond at all. If I had known, I would have asked Miss to come later." At this time, Huan, the deer in Xiao Juzi's hands, also cried out happily. It ran over and stuck out its tongue to lick Zhang Xiaohua's face intimately. Since Zhang Xiaohua came to Rejuvenation Valley, she had left Huan to others to raise and didn't take care of it. Now that they hadn't seen each other for half a year, how could she not be happy? However, Zhang Xiaohua was not in the mood to pay attention to Huan's situation. She gently patted its horn and said to Nie Qianyu, "Little fishy, let's go inside to warm up. Seeing you so cold, my heart." Zhang Xiaohua stopped at the right time. Nie Qianyu forced a smile and said, No need, Brother Ren. It's already late. The caravan of the incense cult is usually prepared before dawn. When I came over just now, I saw the people in the valley helping to pack up. It should be ready soon. Brother Ren, you should go there early. Don't give people a bad impression." "But..." Zhang Xiaohua looked at Nie Qianyu's face. "It's okay, Brother Ren. Although it's cold now, it should be warm when we reach the outer valley. Don't delay your journey." "Okay." Zhang Xiaohua nodded and walked back to the pill room. She took out a small package that she had packed last night, and took out her great wisdom sword. She put these two things on Huan's back and said, "Let's go." Thus, Little Orange took Huan's hand and left first. Zhang Xiaohua and Ye Qianyu slowly followed behind. When they left the inner valley, the east was already a little bright. In the distance, they could see that the caravan of the incense cult had already been packed up. There were only a few people walking around. Zhang Xiaohua did not dare to release her spiritual sense at first, for fear of being discovered by Master Kong. However, when she saw the caravan, she suddenly remembered that she had used her spiritual sense to observe the caravan the day before yesterday. And yesterday, when she directly used her spiritual sense to see through Master Kong's veil, she did not know. She must have seen that something was wrong with her. It was definitely not a problem with her spiritual sense. Immediately, Zhang Xiaohua released her spiritual sense. Sure enough, in the distant attic, Steward Yang and Valley Master Nye, as well as a few disciples of the incense cult, were waiting respectfully downstairs. Master Kong was still coming downstairs. Zhang Xiaohua was relieved. This time, she noticed that Nye Qianyu, who was beside her, was wearing a light yellow robe. She was dressed very beautifully. Even her face, which usually did not wear any makeup, was slightly dressed. It was the same appearance as when she returned to the Rejuvenation Valley that day. It was just that back then, she had braided her hair. Now, her long hair was loose and she looked more mature. However, there seemed to be something different. In a hurry, Zhang Xiaohua could not tell. The two of them walked very slowly. Nye Qianyu clutched the corner of her clothes and secretly bit her lips. Zhang Xiaohua also lowered her head and walked quietly. The two of them did not speak. When the figures of Master Kong, Steward Yang and Valley Master Nye appeared in the distance, the two of them had only walked a short distance. When she saw the figures, Nye Qianyu knew that it was time to say goodbye. Her eyes immediately turned red and she said, "Big Brother Ren, you're leaving soon. I don't know if you've thought about everything about the incense cult," Zhang Xiaohua said softly. "It's just a matter of finding out. I just have to be careful. If I can learn something, I'm willing to do so. Little Yuer, don't worry. That's good. Big Brother Ren, you still have to be careful. Don't." As she spoke, Nye Qianyu did not know what to say. As they spoke, Peacock and the others had already walked half the distance, but Zhang Xiaohua and Nye Qianyu had not even walked half the distance. Nye Qianyu looked over anxiously and took out 2 jade bottles and handed them to Zhang Xiaohua. She said, "Big Brother Ren, these 2 jade bottles were given to me by Father yesterday. One is the Crimson Flame Pill and the other is the Yvondan Pill. I know you have some with you, but these are hard to come by. It's better to keep as many as you can. Take them, I have no use for them anyway." "Ah?" Zhang Xiaohua was surprised. These things had been tossed around, why did it return to her? Zhang Xiaohua quickly declined. "1 Crimson Flame Pill is enough. It's useless to have more. I still have a lot of Yvondan Pill with me. You can keep them for yourself." Nye Qianyu refused. "The Crimson Flame Pill is the most important thing for you to improve your skills. It's also useful for you to spread the incense cult. The Yvondan Pill is even more important. It's extremely effective in treating internal injuries. It's inevitable that you'll encounter danger in the martial arts world. If you can have 1 more Yvondan Pill, you'll have 1 more layer of protection." Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand. "Let's not talk about the Yvondan Pill first. I still have the Crimson Flame Pill. Only the first one is effective. The rest are redundant. I have no use for them. You can take them." Seeing Zhang Xiaohua decline, Nye Qianyu's tears almost fell. 1 more pill is always useful. She stubbornly placed her outstretched hand in front of Zhang Xiaohua's eyes and refused to withdraw it. Zhang Xiaohua was extremely touched. She looked at the 2 sacred pills that everyone in the martial arts world coveted. Nye Qianyu gave them to her without hesitation, just to give her an additional layer of protection. Zhang Xiaohua rubbed her slightly sour nose, looked into the distance, and whispered into Nye Qianyu's ear. "Little Yuer, keep it well. I also have a lot of Crimson Flame Pills. I'll only tell you one. Don't tell anyone else. Bah! Nie Qianyu couldn't help but spit. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the other jade bottle and said, "This is the Yhuanden pill. That Lord Kong gave me 6 pills. I've been using them. Don't underestimate your big brother Rin. When have I ever suffered internal injuries? And this Yhuanden pill, to be honest, I really have no use for it. Although it has a great reputation, it can't treat my internal injuries." "What?" Nie Qianyu asked curiously. "The Yhuanden pill is a sacred pill for healing injuries. How can it not treat your internal injuries? Big brother Ren, don't lie to me." Zhang Xiaohua acted mysterious. "Little Yuer, I'll only tell you. The internal energy I practice is very strange. Ordinary pills are useless for me. You must remember to keep it a secret. Don't tell anyone else." These 2 sentences of "don't tell anyone else" made Nie Qianyu feel sweet in her heart. She was skeptical. Zhang Xihua's lips curled up. "When did your big brother Ren lie to you? Quickly keep it. Don't let the people from the cult of fragrance see it. Otherwise, your father won't be able to take it." Nie Qianyu hesitated. Zhang Xiahua said again, "If you don't keep it, I'll be angry." This sentence was half true and half false. Nie Qianyu treated it as an imperial edict and immediately kept it in her arms. She was afraid to make him unhappy. Seeing this, Zhang Xiahua smiled. "That's a good little Yuer." At this moment, Peacock had already boarded the carriage. She looked up and frowned. Valley Head Nie saw this and quickly said, "Lord Kong, please don't blame me. I'll hurry them up." Peacock snorted and waved her hand, indicating that there was no need. Manager Yang smiled at the side. "It's been many years since they left. I don't know when they'll meet again. Let's talk a little more." Nie Qianyu saw that Lord Kong had already boarded the carriage and did not dare to keep Zhang Xiaohua any longer. She hurriedly said, "Big brother Ren, quickly go. I'll send you here." "You." She could not finish the word. "You." Her eyes were red and she was choking with sobs. "Please give me a monthly vote, a recommendation vote." -3. Chapter 509. Zhang Xiaohua looked at Nie Qianyu's small face, nodded, and then turned around. Little Orange was holding Huan Huan's hand and was not far away. Zhang Xiaohua walked in front of Little Orange and saw that Little Orange was also shedding tears of farewell. She sighed and floated up. Turning back to look at Nie Qianyu, she patted Huan Huan's bald horn and Huan Huan quickly ran towards the carriages. Peacock looked at Zhang Xiaohua's David's deer and said in a low voice, "This David's deer is Ren Xiaoyao's mount?" Valley Head Nie smiled apologetically. "Yes, this David's deer is very human-like and is called Huan Huan." Peacock did not comment and waved her hand. "Let's go." Manager Yang shouted loudly. "Official Kong's orders, let's go!" Immediately, everyone in the carriages started moving and the carriages were about to set off. Manager Yang turned around and cupped his fists towards Valley Head Nie. "Old brother Nie, this brother will be leaving now. If there is a chance in the future, we will meet again." At this time, Manager Yang did not bother to call him Valley Head Nie. Valley Head Nie looked at the old man he had known for decades and also cupped his fists. "All right, brother. Have a safe journey. If there is a chance in the future, come to Rejuvenation Valley. This old brother will be waiting for you at any time." "Ha!" The two smiled and parted with tears in their eyes. But at this time, a shout came from afar. "Big brother Ren, big brother Ren!" Official Kong, who was about to enter the carriage, immediately stopped and raised his head to look into the distance. He saw that Nie Qianyu seemed to have thought of something and took out something from her bosom, shouting, "Big brother Ren, wait!" She chased after him on the muddy grass. Zhang Xiaohua also stopped when she heard the shout. Seeing Nie Qianyu chase after her and Official Kong's carriage, she patted Huan Huan and turned around to hurry over. Perhaps the grass was slippery, or perhaps she tripped in the mud, but in any case, our cute and easily injured Nie Qianyu slipped again and fell straight into the mud. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua was still far away and could not help her up even if she wanted to. Under everyone's gaze, Nie Qianyu fell to the ground, but her hands were still raised high. Then, she carefully got up, afraid of dirtying the thing in her hands, and continued to run forward. Zhang Xiaohua quickly dismounted. Nie Qianyu rushed in front of her and handed the thing in her hands in front of Zhang Xiaohua, panting. Brother Ren, I have nothing else to give you. This is a silk bag that I personally made yesterday. Take it as a souvenir, Take it as a memento, take it as a souvenir. Zhang Xiaohua and, as she got, Nie rushed in front of her, Nie Qianyu rushed in front, and in front, and she and Qianyu at her, as she ants, holding the thing in her hand, in S. Looking at Nie Qianyu's muddy body and face, as well as the green silk pouch in her hand, Zhang Xiaohua was once again moved. He carefully took the pouch, but he heard Nie Qianyu's face turn red as if blood was about to drip out. She whispered, Big brother Ren, please keep the things inside. You can look at them later. Zhang Xiaohua rubbed her fingers slightly and a gap appeared in the silk bag. She did not need to look at it with her eyes, but with her divine sense, she could see that it was actually a bundle of black hair. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly understood why she did not like Nie Qianyu just now. It was because of her hair. Zhang Xiaohua could not hold it in any longer. Her eyes were red and she said softly, Little Yue. Nie Qianyu finally burst into tears. She rushed over and fell into Zhang Xiaohua's arms. Brother Ren. Zhang Xiaohua raised her hands and did not know if she should put them down. Nie Qianyu hugged Zhang Xiaohua's waist with both hands, tears gushing out of her eyes like water. At this moment Peacock, who was in the distance, frowned slightly and shouted in a low voice, Caravan, set off! She actually used her internal energy, and the whole Rejuvenation Valley heard it clearly. Everyone who saw Zhang Xiaohua and Nie Qianyu did not dare to delay. They immediately came to their senses and set off. Zhang Xiaohua's heart tightened, but she did not know if she should push Nie Qianyu away. Alas, the cicadas in winter are mournful. Facing the pavilion in the evening, the sudden rain has just stopped. Drinking in the tent at the capital gate is not in the mood. Reluctant to leave, the boat starts. Holding hands and looking at each other with teary eyes, she was speechless. While Zhang Xiaohua was hesitating, she heard official Kong say in a low voice, And Xiaoyao, catch up quickly in a moment. Do not delay the journey. After saying this, Peacock went straight into the carriage and did not say anything else. Everyone was astonished. Only Valley Head Nia looked happy. Looking at the two people in the mud from afar, he led the Rejuvenation Valley people to follow the incense cult's caravan, and slowly sent them off. Nie Qianyu, who buried her head in Zhang Xiaohua's arms, did not hear Peacock's first sentence clearly. However, she heard the second sentence very clearly. She could not help blushing and was about to raise her head. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. She finally put her hand down and stroked Nie Qianyu's black hair. Then she put her mouth next to Nie Qianyu's ear. Nie Qianyu's body felt hot and dry. She was surprised and happy. This was in front of everyone. How could Brother Ren? However, she heard Zhang Xiaohua's voice next to her ear. Nie Qianyu was stunned at first, then surprised, then confused, and finally grateful. After nearly half an incense stick of time, Zhang Xiaohua raised his head and smiled. Little Yue, do you remember clearly? Nie Qianyu's face was red, but she did not let go of her hand. She said, I remember it clearly, Brother Ren. Is this really the Beidou School's internal strength secret manual? I can cultivate it? Zhang Xiaohua nodded. Yes, but you have to swear that you will not tell anyone about this cultivation method, not even your father. Nie Qianyu nodded resolutely. Okay, little fishy, you can. Zhang Xiaohua was too embarrassed to say it clearly. Nie Qianyu understood tacitly and quickly let go of her hand. She said shyly, Brother Ren, please don't blame me. I was a little rude. Looking at Nie Qianyu's shy expression, Zhang Xiaohua could not help but reach out and pinch her nose. She said, Don't blame me, how can I blame you? Nie Qianyu revealed a happy smile. She bit the corner of her mouth and did not speak. The two of them were silent for a moment. Nie Qianyu whispered, "Brother Ren, let's go. If we don't leave now, we will delay the journey. If Master Kong blames us, all our previous efforts will be in vain." Zhang Xiaohua nodded and smiled. She pinched her nose again. "I have to go. Don't cry anymore. There will be a chance to meet again." Nie Qianyu nodded, but her tears flowed out again. Zhang Xiaohua sighed. She gritted her teeth and turned to leave. She heard Nie Qianyu call out again, "Brother Ren." Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. He turned around again, looked at Little Orange who was waiting in the distance, and said in a low voice, "Little fish Nie, there's something I need to tell you, but don't blame me, and don't tell anyone else." Nie Qianyu nodded desperately. Zhang Xiaohua whispered, "Actually, my name is not Ren Xiaoyao. My real name is Zhang Xiaohua." "Zhang Xiaohua?" Nie Qianyu opened her mouth in surprise. There were tears in her eyes, but she wanted to laugh out loud. She never expected that the Brother Ren, who was excellent in martial arts and merciless in killing people, would have such a cute name. Seeing Nie Qianyu's surprise, Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly explained, "Little fishy, don't blame me. It's not that I don't want to explain, but I don't have a chance. Oh, don't forget you lied to me about your age. If it wasn't for the martial arts competition, you wouldn't." Seeing Zhang Xiaohua so anxious, Nie Qianyu could not help but laugh out loud. "It's not your fault, Brother Ren. You still call me Brother Ren?" Nie Qianyu glared at Zhang Xiaohua. "Didn't you want to hide it from others? If I don't call you Brother Ren, what should I call you?" Zhang Xiaohua scratched his head. Alas, he was coaxed by this girl and revealed all his secrets. In his mind, although the carriage of the fragrance cult was moving slowly, it was already far away. Zhang Xiaohua did not dare to delay and said, "Little fishy, I have to go. You have to take care of yourself. Don't be anxious to improve your internal strength." "Okay, I really have to go." Zhang Xiaohua finally reached out his hand and stroked Nie Qianyu's hair. He turned around and floated onto the David's deer. He patted Huan Huan's bald horn. The David's deer screamed and ran after Nie Qianyu. Zhang Xiaohua sat cross-legged and stared at Nie Qianyu. His heart was filled with mixed feelings. Don't cry, don't cry. Brother Ren told me not to cry." Nie Qianyu murmured in her heart, and in a low voice. However, looking at Zhang Xiaohua's figure that was getting smaller and smaller, tears still came out of her eyes. Alas, since ancient times, sentimental feelings have hurt parting. How can I neglect the autumn festival? Tonight, when I wake up from my drunken stupor, the wind blows and the waning moon on the bank of willow trees. This year's departure should be a good time in name only. Even if there were thousands of amorous feelings, who would he tell? The David's deer went on the path out of the valley. Zhang Xiaohua stretched out his hand and waved goodbye. Nie Qianyu saw this and quickly waved back. However, in less than a moment, Zhang Xiaohua's figure had disappeared. After a while, the tactful Little Orange walked forward and said, "Miss, Brother Ren has gone far. You should go back and change your clothes. Otherwise, you will get sick." "Brother Ren?" Hearing this, Nie Qianyu felt warm and happy in her heart. This guy never wants to suffer any loss. I just told him my age, but he remembered it. That's my real name. He didn't tell me until the last moment. Alas, Nie Qianyu and Zhang Xiaohua, aren't they a perfect match? Could it be that he... In an instant, Nie Qianyu was stunned. She couldn't even hear Little Orange calling her from the side. Zhang Xiaohua sat cross-legged on Huan Huan's back and waited until Nie Qianyu was out of sight before turning around. If he used his divine sense, he could still see Nie Qianyu. However, he didn't do so. Parting was always cruel. Wouldn't he torture himself many times? Looking at the dark green silk pouch in his hand, Zhang Xiaohua sighed in his heart, and carefully put it into his money pouch. In addition to the Prajna heavy sword and his own small bag, there was also a huge bag on Huan Huan's back. Needless to say, Nie Qianyu had prepared it for him. Zhang Xiaohua touched it with his hand and knew that there were many things inside. He sighed again and looked forward. As far as his eyes could see, there was no sign of the carriages. However, there were Rejuvenation Valley disciples waiting not far away. They must have been instructed by Valley Master Nye to wait for Zhang Xiaohua to come closer, and quickly bow to him, and point him in the direction of the carriages. Zhang Xiaohua nodded with a smile, and urged the David's deer to follow closely. After chasing for a while, he finally saw a group of people in the distance. It was Valley Master Nye who led the Rejuvenation Valley disciples to bid farewell to Manager Yang and the other fragrance cult disciples. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua coming, Manager Yang laughed loudly. "Our infatuated lover is finally here. Old brother Nye, you don't have to send him off. You've been here for so long, aren't you waiting for him?" Valley Master Nye smiled. Yes. Little brother Yang is worthy of me sending him off so far. Forget it. I've never sent him off so far before. Valley Master Nye laughed loudly. Zhang Xiaohua came forward and also dismounted. He bid farewell to Nye Qianrong and Yu Zhongling, Nye Qianxiu and Changxing, Mu Qingxian and Fei He, and the others. Finally, he walked in front of Valley Master Nye and bowed deeply. "Uncle Nye, I won't say any superfluous words of thanks. I will remember your words in my heart and will not let you down. Please rest assured." Valley Master Nye nodded and smiled with relief. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the happy departing crowd and said, "In the future, if Rejuvenation Valley needs anything from me, please tell me. I will not hesitate to go through water and tread on fire." -3. Chapter 510. Zhang Xiaohua spoke very softly and Valley Master Nye nodded slightly. He reached out and patted him on the shoulder, indicating that he understood. Manager Yang, who was waiting not far away, looked at them with a sense of farewell. Then, Zhang Xiaohua patted Huan and followed Manager Yang. He turned back and cupped his hands at the people of Rejuvenation Valley who were standing still. Then, he turned back and followed the carriages of the incense cult. They went further and further away and gradually disappeared. Looking at Zhang Xiaohua, who had become a black dot, Nye Qianrong rode to Valley Master Nye's side and said, "Father, I always wanted to remind you, but I married early and didn't dare to talk about the affairs of the valley. Now that the emissary of the incense cult has left, I can't hold it in any more and want to." Valley Master Nye smiled and said, "Are you still worried that Ren Xiaoxia will bring trouble to Rejuvenation Valley?" Nye Qianrong's face was burning and she murmured, "Although Ren Xiaoxia has helped Rejuvenation Valley after all." Valley Master Nye waved his hand and said, "Qianrong, remember, Ren Xiaoxia's help to Rejuvenation Valley is as heavy as a mountain. You don't need to know the details. We have to pay the price for what we did. Besides, it's already like this. Even if there is a mistake, it's useless to talk about it. Why think about it?" Nye Qianrong nodded. "But little Yu." At this time, Yu Zhonglin also stepped forward and said, "Father-in-law, this Ren Xiaoxia is a rare person in Jianghu. If we let him go like this, little Yu will be lovesick." Nye Qianrong spat. "How can you talk about your sister-in-law like this?" Valley Master Nye stroked his beard and said in disappointment, "Ren Xiaoxia is not a fish in a pond. He just hasn't had the opportunity yet. Sooner or later, he will soar to the 9th heaven. But our Rejuvenation Valley. It depends on whether our little Yu has such charm." While they were talking, Nye Qianxiu and Changxing also stepped forward. The three of them looked at each other and shut their mouths. Nye Qianxiu looked curiously at the three of them who kept their mouths shut. She smiled and said, "Father and big sister are also talking about this Ren Xiaoyao, right? This brat is really smart. He managed to coax father into agreeing to let him spread the incense cult. Father, it's not that I want to nag at you, but even if he escorted Xiaoyu back, he was just driving a carriage and sending a person back. Who knows if he has any other motives? My Rejuvenation Valley has such a huge foundation. How could he not know the benefits of a live-in son-in-law? That day, he had pretended to refuse, but why didn't he take the initiative to leave? In my opinion, he must have investigated clearly and used our Rejuvenation Valley as a springboard to spread the incense cult. Moreover, he also played with little Yu's feelings and took our Rejuvenation Valley into his hands." Chang Xing didn't say it directly. He only said, "Father-in-law, this matter is somewhat inappropriate. Ren Xiaoyao is just an outsider. Even if his background is clean, it's best not to." Seeing Valley Master Nie's unfriendly expression, Chang Xing didn't dare finish his sentence. He only said, "In any case, father-in-law should be more careful in the future." When Nie Qianxiu saw this, she smiled coldly and said, "Since ancient times, honest advice has always been unpleasant to the ear. Father, I'm only thinking for our rejuvenation valley. If you don't appreciate my kindness, we, the younger generation, can't complain. However, I still have to thank Father for his forceful actions. Now that the incense cult's emissary has left, we've already instructed our family to prepare a carriage. I'll return to the Whale Gang and tell father-in-law about this matter. I'm sure father-in-law will come to express his gratitude. I'll return then." When he heard this, Valley Master Nie waved his hand. "No need. Chang Xing, go back and tell your father not to mention this matter again in the future. Just pretend it never happened. It won't be good if word gets out." Chang Xing nodded. Afterwards, the husband and wife left on their horses. Valley Master Nie looked at everyone and also waved his hand. "Let's go back to the valley." Then, he looked in the direction that the incense cult had gone. They had long since disappeared. He turned his horse around and headed straight back to Rejuvenation Valley. Those who needed to be sent off had already been sent off, and those who needed to leave had already left. Several months had passed like yesterday. Rejuvenation Valley's days would continue as usual. However, with the Crimson Flame pill and a new method of refining pills, could Rejuvenation Valley still be the Rejuvenation Valley of the past? A ray of hope rose in Valley Master Nie's heart. Back to Zhang Xiaohua. She rode her odd beast and caught up to Manager Yang in front of them. Manager Yang was quite a distance away from the carriages. He was slowly moving forward. It was obvious that he was waiting for Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua approached and cupped her hands. "Manager Yang, this little one thanks you for your help." Manager Yang looked at Zhang Xiaohua and smiled. "Virtuous nephew Rin, your odd beast is quite good. Rejuvenation Valley must have given it to you as a gift, right?" Zhang Xiaohua was startled and didn't explain. She smiled and said, "It was Uncle Nie's good intentions." Manager Yang nodded. "Old brother Nie and little you are really good to you. They even gave you the valley's rare David's deer as your mount. I'm really envious. However, this is a small matter. For you, they didn't even care about the rules of recommending medicine apprentices and came to me through the back door." Zhang Xiaohua said respectfully, "Yes, I will never forget Valley Master Nie and little you's great kindness." Manager Yang sneered. "What's the use of not forgetting it? In the future, the right way is to know how to repay kindness." Zhang Xiaohua was even more startled. She cupped her hands and said, "Rest assured, Manager Yang. How could this little one not know? When I leave the incense cult in the future, I will definitely repay Rejuvenation Valley." Manager Yang shook his head and sneered. "Ren Xiaoyao, you and Commander Nie both look down on my incense cult. Return to the Jianghu? Easier said than done. Who knows how many medicine apprentices from Rejuvenation Valley have entered the incense cult, and how many have returned. Don't think too far ahead." Zhang Xiaohua cursed inwardly. "What does Manager Yang mean? I will never forget it. You said no, so I will repay the kindness. You still won't. What do you want me to do?" Zhang Xiaohua was still as respectful as ever. "Then please instruct me, Steward Yang. No matter what my identity was yesterday, from now on, I am the Aroma Cult's medicine boy. If there is anything I need, please instruct me." Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's humble attitude, Manager Yang nodded in his heart. "Yes, since you know your identity, then it will be easy to handle. Let's talk about your previous identity. You are the son-in-law of Rejuvenation Valley. Remember, you are little Yu's future husband." Zhang Xiaohua was greatly embarrassed and thought, "Oh, this huge hat sounds nice on my head. I didn't even touch it, but it was branded." If little Fishy heard this, she might be overjoyed. He couldn't refute and smiled awkwardly. "This? I know. It's just that, no buts. Manager Yang waved his hand. He said, I have watched little you grow up. Since Marshal Nia has handed his son-in-law to me, I will definitely watch over him well. Also, you must remember that your future wife is waiting for you in Rejuvenation Valley. I'm going to faint, Zhang Xiaohua complained. What does this have to do with anything? Valley Head Nia doesn't even put on the airs of a father-in-law. This unrelated person is AI. He has good intentions. At least Valley Head Nia didn't hand over the wrong person. But, Zhang Xiaohua cried out in his heart, you've given me a warning, but little fish Nia isn't just waiting around. Maybe she'll meet a handsome husband tomorrow and marry him. I'm the only one who's being watched by you. Manager Yang saw that Zhang Xiaohua didn't speak and said, also, your current identity is only a medicine boy in my pill expansion hall. This identity is different from your previous one. To be clear, it is the same as the medicine boy in Rejuvenation Valley. It is even more lowly. You should be mentally prepared. Don't feel uncomfortable. Zhang Xiaohua nodded. Manager Yang, please don't worry. I know. Uncle Nia has also warned me. Manager Yang also nodded and changed the topic. Since you know your current identity, I have to tell you that from top to bottom in the fragrance cult, female disciples are respected. Whenever you meet a female disciple, you must be careful. You must straighten your posture and attitude. Be a good medicine boy with a clear heart and a clear mind. Zhang Xiaohua almost fell from the David's deer. Is there a need to go so far? After talking for so long, you are just warning me not to be a womanizer and let little fishy Nia down. Sure enough, Manager Yang continued, whether it's your previous identity or your current identity, it's not good to provoke the female disciples of the fragrance cult. Not to mention that you've let down Marshal Nia and little you, even the rules of my pill repository hall won't forgive you. Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Manager Yang, look at me. Do I look like someone who would provoke a female disciple? Manager Yang looked up and down and shook his head slightly. However, he looked at the carriages in front and whispered, Ren Xiaoyao, tell me. And don't worry, I will not tell anyone. Do you know our Master Kong? When did you meet her? Manager Yang's gossipy look surprised Zhang Xiaohua. He quickly waved his hand. Master Kong? Don't talk nonsense. I met Master Kong for the first time at Elder Vang's place. Moreover, she was wearing a veil. I didn't even see her face. I don't even know what she looks like. How could I know her? Not to mention meeting her. You really don't know her? Manager Yang still didn't believe him. But why was she so abnormal when she saw you? Moreover, she treated you so well just now. She didn't even blame you for not setting off on time. Do you think I am a fool? Zhang Xiaohua was puzzled. Isn't it just a little late? Is it that serious? He still shook his head. Think about it. If I knew Master Kong, why would I ask Uncle Nia to find you? Wouldn't it be better to find Master Kong directly? And that's true. Manager Yang frowned and continued. However, even if Lord Kong has taken a fancy to you, you must remember not to have any thoughts of climbing up the social ladder. If that's the case, even if I have to sacrifice this old life of mine, I will drag you down from your high horse. Hee, don't think that you can be complacent just because you're the champion of the martial arts competition. My fragrance sect is full of experts and any one of my disciples can crush you to death with just a little finger. If you don't listen to me and want to let little you down, this old man can find someone to castrate you so that you can only look but not eat. Looking at Manager Yang's complacent look, Zhang Xiaohua almost fell. This was the first ideological education class of the fragrant cult, and the consequences were so serious. Recommend me. -3. Chapter 511. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's ashen face, Manager Yang was immensely pleased with himself and laughed. Nephew Rin, don't be afraid. As your uncle, I'm just saying. As long as you follow the rules in the cult of incense and do your part, your future father-in-law and I have already figured out your future path. You just have to follow along. The bright path is right in front of you. In the future, everything in the cult will be taken care of by me as your uncle. Isn't that 100 times better than others who have no backing? All right. Looking at Manager Yang's "see if you're being reasonable or not" expression, Zhang Xiaohua silently cursed. She had just raised a big stick to warn him, and now he wanted to give her a carrot. Do you really think I'm a 15-year-old child? But he was still respectful and only had 2 ears. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's respect, Manager Yang was even happier and patted his chest. Although there are very few medicine apprentices who can make a name for themselves, isn't there still your Uncle Yang? I will definitely put in a good word for you in front of the hall master, and create the best conditions for you so that you can reach the threshold of an outer disciple as soon as possible. Then I will find a familiar disciple to teach you properly so that you can pass the test earlier. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she was about to ask about the meaning of passing the test when Manager Yang changed the topic. But this is under the care of the Pill Repository Hall. Even if you're an inner disciple, if she has any matters to discuss with you, you must ignore her or find a reason to reject her. But you look like a 20-year-old person, but you're still only 15 years old. You're just a medicine apprentice. This Kong, why would he fancy you? I hope I'm just worrying for nothing. The more he spoke, the weaker his tone became, as if there was no better reason. Zhang Xiaohua had long been laughing in her heart. Looking at Manager Yang's respect for Lord Kong, it was needless to say that the difference between their positions in the cult of fragrance was too great. Yet Manager Yang had forcefully used the Pill Repository Hall as a shield to persuade and educate her, fearing that she would have an affair. In fact, if she really had the intention of climbing up the social ladder, looking at Manager Yang's taboo towards Lord Kong, as long as she could rely on Lord Kong, even if Manager Yang pulled the Pill Repository Hall's purple ginseng elder, he probably wouldn't touch a single strand of her hair. However, was it necessary for Zhang Xiaohua to do this? He probably didn't even have the slightest bit of such thoughts. Zhang Xiaohua was both angry and amused. She cupped her hands and said, Uncle Yang, don't worry. I'll remember your words clearly. I won't let you worry. It's easy to say this promise, but no matter what I say now, Uncle Yang may not fully believe it. Why don't you wait and see what I do in the future? Manager Yang nodded with gratification and thought to himself. It's really like this. Even if you say it well now, what can I say when you turn around and look at Lord Kong's embrace? You're not perfunctory. You're a little interesting. You're worthy of little used regard. Manager Yang's face was stiff. Then I'll see what you do in the future. I'll put you in front of me and watch over you carefully. Damn! Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. She thought, if you keep watching me like this, how am I going to find second brother? However, she still smiled and said, That's the best. If I can follow Uncle Yang, won't it save me a lot of trouble? Manager Yang nodded happily. Just as he was about to urge his horse to move, he reminded her. Oh right, you can call me uncle and nephew in private. You must not let others see our friendship. Otherwise, even if you want to make things convenient in the future, others will see through it. I'm dizzy again. Zhang Xiaohua was helpless. I still want to rely on you. No matter what, I feel like I'm living off a woman. She could only smile and say, I know this. Manager Yang, please don't worry. Alright, let's go. Ren Xiaoyao, your Rejuvenation Valley's carriage is now at the back of the convoy. There are a total of 6 carriages. 3 of them are items sent to the Fragrant Religion. They have already been merged into the front and handed over to the sect's disciples to watch over. The carriages that the 10 of you are in are at the back. Valley Master Nia took care of you and let you share a carriage with Chang Chang. The other 8 people will squeeze into 2 carriages. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, Isn't this all because of Manager Yang's concern? Manager Yang laughed and said, No wonder little Yu has taken a fancy to you. Your mouth is also very sweet. After he finished speaking, he spurred his horse forward. He felt very refreshed in his heart. Damn it, the feeling of scolding people is so good. No wonder old man Gu would scold me whenever he's unhappy. Seeing Ren Xiaoyao being stunned by my scolding really makes me feel very good. How could Zhang Xiaohua know what he was thinking? She only shook her head from behind, patted Huan Huan's bald horn, and directly chased after them. Previously, the Fragrant Religions convoy had more than 10 carriages. In addition to the Rejuvenation Valley's carriages, there were already more than 20 carriages. From the front to the back, the winding path was not short. The Fragrant Religion's previous guard disciples were slightly insufficient. When a disciple walking at the back saw Manager Yang and Zhang Xiaohua chasing after them, he loudly said, "Manager Yang, I heard that this brat has some skills." Manager Yang smiled and said, "Ren Xiaoyao was able to knock that Longting Villa's sword young master out of the arena. Naturally, he has some skill. Brat, you also know this news, don't you?" "Hee hee, I heard that he was beaten by Master Kong until he vomited blood yesterday?" That disciple was somewhat gloating. What level is Master Kong at? No matter how powerful this brat is, he can't be compared to her. Even you, aren't you also several times more powerful than him? That disciple was very pleased and said with a smile, "I wonder how your injuries are?" Zhang Xiaohua was somewhat baffled. She cupped her hands and said, "I took some medicine and am still in the process of recovery. However, there are no major problems." "Hee hee, that's good. However, that Yuhuandan pill is a good thing." That disciple did not finish speaking. Zhang Xiaohua immediately understood. She inwardly curled her lips and said with a frown, "Is that so? So it's like this. Unfortunately, I only took one yesterday and the rest were taken away by Valley Master Nia. If I had known that it was so precious." That disciple sneered. "If you had known that it was so precious, you wouldn't have given it to me?" Hee hee. Zhang Xiaohua sighed and did not speak. She then looked as if she had suddenly realized something and raised her hand to take it, saying, I forgot that Valley Master Nia gave me some Rejuvenation Valley's self-made blood replenishing pills before he left. If Senior Marshal Brother is also injured, this little one is willing to give some to you." "Don't." That disciple arrogantly waved his hand. "Don't call me Senior Marshal Brother like this. It makes it seem like I am very familiar with you. I only asked you this because there aren't enough disciples guarding the carriages. I know that you know a bit of martial arts, and wanted you to take care of the rear. You saying this makes it seem like I am coveting something from you. Although your Rejuvenation Valley's blood replenishing pill is famous in the Jianghu, it is only an extremely common pill in my eyes. Don't think that you can rely on it to make connections, and don't curse me to be injured for no reason like you." Zhang Xiaohua looked as if she had been lectured and repeatedly said that she did not dare. That disciple then said, "Since your injuries are no longer a problem, I will leave the rear of the carriage to you. However, you don't have to be afraid. I will wait at the front to help you clear the way. You will only be a decoration. If there is anything, just call and we will immediately rush over." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "That would be best, Master, but please don't worry, this little one will be strictly on guard. If there is any trouble, I will immediately warn you." That disciple saw that Zhang Xiaohua was expressing her loyalty, and was even pretending to be serious. He secretly laughed in his heart. This scoundrel actually thinks of herself as someone important. She doesn't even think of her own identity. She is only a medicine boy. Then he waved his hand, held his head high, and urged the horse forward. Seeing that disciple walk far away, Manager Yang smiled and said, "Ren Xiaoyao, don't take it to heart. The people of my sect all have their eyes on the top of their heads and cannot tolerate outsiders. Although this disciple is an outer disciple, he is also like this." Zhang Xiaohua smiled. How could he take this kind of contempt to heart? Soon after, Manager Yang also quietly came up and whispered, "That nephew Ren, the Yuhuandan pill." Zhang Xiaohua nodded. "Indeed, I also didn't know that the Yuhuandan pill was so precious. I thought it was only a healing pill. When Uncle Nia asked, I gave it all to him. My injuries were only healed by the blood replenishing pill." "You." Manager Yang's face was full of disappointment. "No wonder your injuries are not completely healed." Just now I was wondering why you were not fully healed even after eating the Huandan pill. So it was because you ate the blood-replenishing pill. Marshal Nye, that old bastard, still has this kind of skill. If I had known earlier, I would have asked him for it yesterday. Manager Yang inadvertently revealed a hint. He looked at Zhang Xiaohua and smiled. Don't look at me like that. You will naturally know the preciousness of the Huandan pill when you arrive at the School of Fragrance. At that time, you will regret giving it all to your future father-in-law. The more Manager Yang said this, the more Zhang Xiaohua felt that she had made the right choice. If he had flattered the two of them and gave it to them, perhaps all the outer disciples would come over and ask for it. The Huandan pill was not much to begin with, so who was suitable to give it to and who was not? She had not even entered the School of Fragrance, and had already offended so many people. Cough, cough, it was better for her to keep it. Even if she gave it to her second brother or the people from the Misty School in the future, it would still be better than offending others. After educating Zhang Xiaohua and not getting any benefits, Manager Yang said, "And Xiaoyao, you stay behind and guard. If you are tired, you can rest in the carriage. I will go to the front to serve Master Kong. If you need anything, you can come and find me." Zhang Xiaohua cupped his hands in thanks. Manager Yang did not stop and went straight to the middle of the carriages. Zhang Xiaohua released her divine sense and looked forward. In the middle of the carriages, Master Kong was sitting cross-legged in the carriage. She did not know if he was cultivating or meditating. Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment, then rode the David's deer to catch up with the carriages. She did not dare to waste any time. She had not completely understood the incantation of God's guidance. She might be able to hide it from Master Kong for a while, but once she arrived at the School of Fragrance, it would be unknown. If the School of Fragrance's elders or the head of the School of Fragrance noticed a clue, she would be like a lamb sent to the tiger's mouth. She would not be able to find any information about her second brother, and even her own freedom would be in danger. When Zhang Xiaohua reached the back of the carriages, she casually looked at the carriages behind her. Just as she was thinking about which carriage had a powerful person sitting in it, she saw the curtain of the last carriage open. A young man with rosy lips and white teeth stuck his head out and respectfully shouted, "Uncle!" -3. Chapter 512. Zhang Xiaohua almost fell off the David's deer's back when she heard the young man call her little uncle. "What kind of relatives are you? Valley Head Nye even told me to keep an eye on you. If you're not careful, I'll take your life. Who has the patience to claim kinship with you now?" Zhang Xiaohua pretended to be puzzled. "Are you so domineering? How did you get such a domineering name? Why did you call me little uncle?" That domineering smiled. "Little uncle is confused. I call Valley Head Nye's second daughter Nye Qianxiu auntie. Naturally, I'll call Nye Qian you little aunt. You and little aunt are a match made in heaven. If I don't call you little uncle, what else can I call you? As for the name, it's just a title. Once we reach Chuanxiang cult, we may have to change it to something else. It doesn't matter, right? Little uncle?" Zhang Xiaohua sighed inwardly when he saw the shrewdness and flattery on his face. "You're right in the beginning. It's just that I haven't had any contact with your aunt until now. You shouldn't call me uncle or anything like that. Moreover, you're right. Once we reach Chuanxiang cult, we'll have to change our names. It's better if we don't have a relationship like this," Domineering said with a respectful face. "Little uncle is right. Although your relationship with little aunt hasn't become a reality, sooner or later the rice will be cooked. I'm just calling you little uncle too early. In fact, no matter how you change your name in Xuanxiang cult, won't you still be my little uncle? I'll always think so in my heart." "You!" Zhang Xiaohua was also helpless. This guy was too good at talking, and he was no match for him. He could only say, "If the incense cult hears this name, it's inevitable that they will think of something. It's better to change it. Then how should I address you? Little uncle, please teach me." This? Zhang Xiaohua was also in a difficult position. Who knew how to address people in Xuanxiang cult? she casually said. If it doesn't work, just call me by my name. After all, I'll be a medicine boy in the future. With a strong smile, he said, This medicine boy is not that medicine boy. I can't call my uncle's name directly. Let's just call him Young Master Rin. Zhang Xiaohua frowned. She thought for a moment and said, Do as you wish. That's all we can do before we enter the fragrant religion. We'll talk about the future later. I will listen to young Master Ren's instructions. Then, he looked at the David's deer that Zhang Xiaohua was riding and laughed. I have always admired the David's deer of Rejuvenation Valley. My aunt has never brought me to see it. I didn't expect young Master Ren to have such a reputation and actually ride this David's deer out. She then turned to look at the carriage and said softly, I heard from my aunt that when Chuanxiang cult recruits medicine boys from Rejuvenation Valley, they're not allowed to bring anything with them. They're only allowed to wear clothes. Since you're able to ride the odd beast here, you must be able to bring it into Chuanxiang cult. This treatment, TSK, is really... Zhang Xiaohua was taken aback. He didn't think too much about it. He just thought that riding a mount was nothing more than that. He didn't think that there would be such preferential treatment. Then, he naturally linked it to yesterday's meeting with the Fragrant Religion's emissary, Lord Kong. He was able to ride the odd beast to the Fragrant Religion, so it must have been Lord Kong's tacit approval. Others may not have seen Lord Kong's true appearance, so they thought that he and Lord Kong were old acquaintances, or at least had some connection. But Lord Kong under the veil, Zhang Xiaohua could clearly see that although she was beautiful, she had no significant relationship with him. Why would she treat him differently? This was rather strange. However, Zhang Xiaohua only waved his hand and said, Isn't this all because of Steward Yang's good intentions? It's just that I'm causing trouble for him. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have ridden it. She smiled again and said, Since you've ridden it, you've ridden it. It's also to show off young uncle's extraordinariness. By the way, young uncle, I vaguely heard the disciples of Chuanxiang cult asking you to guard the carriage? And what's there to ask? It's just a decoration. Why are you calling me young uncle again? Only then did Zhang Xiaohua come to a realization. Young uncle, I'm used to calling you young uncle. I can't change it in such a short time. I promise that I'll only call you young master when there's no one else around. You. Zhang Xiaohua was somewhat angry and thought to himself. This kid is only about 12 years old. How can he worm his way into being so close? Compared to him, this young master was an idiot. That year at Huanxi Mountain Manor, I was actually teased by someone like Ma Jing. If this kid was there, wouldn't he have played Ma Jing in circles? At this time, he said in a strong and mysterious voice, My aunt and uncle were full of praise for your martial arts. At that time, I didn't think so and thought they were exaggerating. Now it seems that you're actually valued by the disciples of Chuanxiang cult. This nephew really admires young uncle. Zhang Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Then he heard the strong voice say, Young uncle, from now on, this nephew's future will be in your hands. You must not forget about this nephew. By the way, young uncle, this nephew has learned a good massage technique since young. Are you tired? Let's get on the carriage and let this nephew serve you well. His strong and flattering appearance made Zhang Xiaohua have goosebumps all over his body. He waved his hand and said, I'm not tired. We've just started our journey. Then he smiled and said, If young uncle is tired, just tell this nephew. Don't let your fertile water flow into other people's fields. This nephew has nothing to do. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua almost fell down again. What do you mean by, don't let your fertile water flow into other people's fields? How can you describe it like this? Holding Huan's broad back, Zhang Xiaohua felt lucky. If it was an ordinary horse, it would have fallen down again and again. How terrible would that be? Zhang Xiaohua said with a straight face. Chang, you just sit in the carriage. We've just started the journey, and there's still a long way to go. I'll go to the front and take a look. After that, he patted Huan and rushed forward. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua was running away, Chang couldn't help but smile brightly. He turned around and got into the spacious carriage. The two carriages in front were filled with children. When they saw Zhang Xiaohua riding the David's deer forward, they looked at the carriage window with envy. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua had seen them, some of them were sensible and had already cupped their hands in greeting. There were also a few who quickly lowered their heads, as if to avoid something. A few more carriages were filled with things. There were disciples of the School of Fragrance who were leisurely riding their horses. When they saw Zhang Xiaohua coming over, they had already been informed by the other disciples that he was also taking care of the carriages. They nodded slightly at him and said, "And Xiaoyao, the carriages in front belong to the School of Fragrance. You don't have to care about them. Just take care of your own things. You don't have to go forward." Zhang Xiaohua cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for the reminder, senior brother. I'll go back now." As soon as he said, "Senior brother," he knew that something was wrong. As expected, the disciple also frowned. Fortunately, this disciple's personality was good. He waved his hand and said, "Go, but don't call me that in the future." Zhang Xiaohua was greatly embarrassed. He thought to himself, "Are the disciples of the School of Fragrance's external disciples this awesome? I'm only calling him senior brother, but he cares so much." Even the disciples of the Misty School back then didn't seem to be like this. If it was a normal day, Zhang Xiaohua might have asked what he should call him if he didn't call him senior brother. However, looking at that person's arrogant appearance, he was too lazy to ask. He cupped his hands and turned to leave. When Zhang Xiaohua was far away, that person snorted coldly and said softly, "You're just a medicine boy. Even if you're the son-in-law of Rejuvenation Valley, what can you do in front of us? If it weren't for the fact that Rejuvenation Valley treated you well 2 days ago, we would have cut your face long ago." Since he knew that he was just a decoration and that the School of Fragrance's carriages didn't welcome him, Zhang Xiaohua could only stay beside his family's 6 carriages. He still sat cross-legged and closed his eyes to comprehend his incantation. The School of Fragrance's carriages didn't go to Worry City after they left Rejuvenation Valley. Instead, they turned at a junction and went straight to the west. Although Zhang Xiaohua had never seen a caravan of more than 20 carriages, there were many such caravans on a daily basis. Even when Zhang Xiaohu was an escort, his caravan was no less than this. Therefore, although many people stopped to watch along the way, it didn't attract too much attention. On the contrary, the last person in the caravan looked sleepy and was riding a strange mule. He attracted more attention. Fortunately, the School of Fragrance's disciples were knowledgeable enough and didn't treat Zhang Xiaohua as an equal. Therefore, they just wanted to watch the show and focused on their own business. As for Zhang Xiaohua, he didn't care. From Tanha City to Worry City, he didn't know how many people looked at him inexplicably. He was already used to it. In this way, 2 days passed. The caravan had traveled a long way according to the School of Fragrance's itinerary. When it came to the School of Fragrance's itinerary, Zhang Xiaohua admired it. It really was the style of a great sect. They didn't choose only the official roads, but also many winding paths. They didn't even avoid the deep mountains and old forests. Thinking back to when she was with Nie Qianyu and Little Orange, they didn't take ordinary paths. At first, Zhang Xiaohua was also very nervous about his habit of sleeping. But in these 2 days he found that the School of Fragrance's caravan's itinerary was very orderly. Every time it was dark, they would arrive at a place to rest. And this place was often arranged properly. It wasn't some random inn. The food, drink, and accommodation were all ready-made. It seemed to be the place where the School of Fragrance's members lived. Zhang Xiaohua naturally stayed in the same room as Chang Chang. Although Chang Chang tried to get close to Zhang Xiaohua as soon as he entered the room, Zhang Xiaohua ignored him. He only said that he needed to cultivate his internal energy, and could not be disturbed too much. After a few times, Chang Chang learned to be obedient, and only served him carefully. Yes, served him tea and water, and did not say anything else. As for the night cultivation, it was even simpler. With just a finger wind, wouldn't the strong ones obediently sleep until dawn? Chan Chan was overjoyed for the past 2 days. He thought that his insomnia had finally improved. Every day when he woke up, he would nag for a long time. He was so annoyed that Zhang Xiaohua almost hit his acupoints again. One day, Zhang Xiaohua, who was walking on a rugged path and cultivating with her eyes closed, suddenly felt a jolt in her heart. She immediately released her divine sense in front of her, as if she had sensed something. There will be a new atmosphere for the Lunar New Year. Everyone will be rich. Hee hee. Please cast your monthly votes and recommendation votes. Come and read more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. -3. Chapter 513. A few hundred feet in front of the incense cult's convoy, there were dozens of people dressed in bright armor, standing neatly with weapons in their hands. In front of these people were a few refined people. Although they did not have weapons in their hands, their temples were bulging and there were swords hanging from their waists. At first glance, one could tell that they were sword masters. In front of them was an old man dressed in feathered clothes and a star crown. He held a feather fan and waved it unhurriedly, as if waiting for the fish to take the bait. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. How could they be ambushed as soon as they came out of Rejuvenation Valley? However, if it was an ambush, why would they just stand there like that? Wouldn't they find a place to hide and wait for the convoy to pass by? Just as he was wondering, the old man did something that made him even more puzzled. The old man looked up at the sun and frowned slightly. At this time, in the distance, someone was holding a small flag and waving it rapidly. The old man's face lit up and he immediately turned around to give orders. The young men waved their hands. Zhang Xiaohua thought that they were going to ambush, but the dozens of warriors put away their weapons and quickly went to the back of the mountain. Not long after, they came back. Some people were holding bouquets, some people were holding trays, and some people were carrying huge boxes. These people came to the side of the road and lined up respectfully. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the trays and suddenly realized that there was some wine and food in the trays. Oh, so they were the people who flattered the incense cult. Immediately, Zhang Xiaohua was too lazy to pay attention to them and continued to comprehend his chant. Not long after, the incense cult's convoy came to the place where those people were waiting. The disciple leading the way was not nervous and shouted, "Who is in front? How dare you block the path of the incense cult?" The old man didn't panic. He took a step forward and said in a warm voice, "I am Mao Qi of the Firmament Fortress. I have been waiting here for a long time for the emissary of the fragrant religion. Please stay here for a while. We have food and wine for you. If possible, you can walk a few miles and you will arrive at our place. Please stay here for a night." The disciple smiled and said, "Sect leader Mao, you are too kind. I will go and report to the emissary and see if he agrees." After saying that, he patted his horse and left. Not long after, someone came back with a gloomy face. He said, "The envoy has given the order. The Firmament Doc's leader Mao has accepted it. However, we still need to hurry on with our journey, so we won't stop." "Thank you, Leader Mao." Sect leader Mao didn't give way and continued to smile. "Please report to the envoy that the previous envoys are all resting in my sect. My sect has already prepared food and wine, so I hope the envoy will give us some face." The disciple was a little embarrassed. Just as he was about to turn his horse around, he heard a cold snort. "Sect leader Mao, when did you arrange the itinerary of my incense cult? Whether or not I go to the Heaven's Vault Dock is my decision. Although my senior and junior brothers give you face, do I have to be like them?" The voice wasn't loud, but it sounded like it was right next to his ear. Mao Qi was shocked and hurriedly bowed deeply. "I wouldn't dare. How could I have such courage? I just feel that the emissary must be tired from the journey, so I want to show my filial piety. I ask for the emissary's understanding." When Master Kong heard this, he became even angrier. "Since you know, why aren't you moving aside? Do you still want us to walk on the road like this?" When Mao Qi heard this, he quickly stepped back and made way for the emissary. Master Kong's voice sounded again. In the future, if you encounter such situations, you don't need to report to me. Just drive them away. The disciple in front didn't dare to delay and immediately turned around to agree. Then he scolded Mao Qi. Sect leader Mao. When Mao Qi saw this, he hurriedly made a gesture of invitation and said, I don't dare to disturb you. Please have a safe journey. The incense cult disciple raised his horse whip and left first. The other carriages also formed a line and slowly drove past the people of the Heaven's Vault Dock. Although the disciples of the Heaven's Vault Dock were scolded by Peacock, they didn't dare to show any dissatisfaction. They only bowed respectfully and quietly waited for the carriages to leave. When most of the carriages had left, and only the carriages of the Rejuvenation Valley were left, they slightly raised their eyes and stared at the carriages with jealousy in their eyes. It was as if they already knew that these carriages belonged to the Rejuvenation Valley. However, when their eyes fell on Zhang Xiaohua, who was sitting cross-legged beside the carriages and riding the David's deer with her eyes slightly closed, they were all shocked. They all frowned and looked at each other before lowering their heads again. Zhang Xiaohua was sitting on the David's deer and had already seen everything. She was also unhappy. Presumably, the Heaven's Vault Dock had failed to flatter the incense cult and might take their anger out on the Rejuvenation Valley, who had a good relationship with the incense cult. She didn't know if she would bring trouble to the Rejuvenation Valley by swaggering in the carriages. Sure enough, when the carriages of the incense cult were far away, Mao Qi, who was watching from afar, turned around and asked, The last disciple seemed to be riding the David's deer from the Rejuvenation Valley, right? A young man behind him nodded and said, Father, you're right. It is the David's deer. Only places like the Rejuvenation Valley have this kind of beast. Another person also disdainfully said, The Rejuvenation Valley only knows how to flatter the incense cult. They even gave the David's deer to the incense cult. This kind of gift is not something that anyone in Jianghu can afford. Mao Qi also nodded. No wonder the incense cult takes care of the Rejuvenation Valley. Every time they come out, they go to the Rejuvenation Valley. It is difficult for us to even meet the emissaries. At this time, he saw the person behind him frowning as if thinking about something. He asked, Little Three, you've always been talkative. Why are you so quiet today? Are you scared by the incense cult? Little Three raised his head and said, Father, you saw the David's deer just now. Boy saw that the disciple riding the David's deer looked very familiar, as if he had seen him somewhere before. But he couldn't remember where. Mao Qi waved his hand. In the past, the incense cult's emissaries would more or less stop to rest. Some of them even rested at the Heaven's Vault Dock. Maybe you saw him at that time. Little Three still shook his head. No, Father. If it was a disciple of the incense cult that I saw before, Boy would be very respectful. How could I forget? Wasn't the one who led the way the last time we went to the Heaven's Vault Dock? Boy still remembers. This last disciple seemed to be someone I met recently. Also, I saw him from afar. I didn't see him clearly, so I couldn't remember. At this point, his eyes lit up and he slapped his forehead. I remember now. It's actually this guy. Mao Qi was stunned and scolded. Why are you so surprised? Tell me quickly, who is that person? He's not a disciple of the incense cult, but he's in the incense cult's caravan? Little Three laughed. If he's not a disciple of the incense cult, then he's naturally a medicine boy of the Rejuvenation Valley. Mao Qi waved his hand. The medicine boy is only about 10 years old. He's always hiding in the carriage. How could he dare to ride a horse outside like the guards? Little Three said, Father, do you still remember the martial arts competition for a spouse in the Rejuvenation Valley half a year ago? That 14-year-old boy who defeated the sword master of the Longting Villa? Hearing this, Mao Qi seemed to have thought of something and said in surprise, Could it be that this guy is the Ren, something you were talking about half a year ago? Little Three nodded and said, I wasn't sure at first, but now the more I think about it, the more I'm sure. Boy was far away that day and didn't see it clearly. This guy later entered the Rejuvenation Valley and didn't even attend the banquet, so Boy's memory isn't very accurate. Didn't old Nia later call him Ren something? Ren Xiaoyao. Yes, he said that Ren Xiaoyao was still young, just 14 years old. It would be a few years before he could marry his third brother. How could this be? Could it be that he was sent to the incense cult as a medicine boy? But what about his third brother? What about the martial arts competition for a spouse? Mao Qi nodded thoughtfully and said, I don't know what old Nia's plan is to tie the Rejuvenation Valley and the incense cult closer together. Forget it, let's not think about it anymore. I'd better discuss it with old Sun and the others. Little Three also nodded and said, Father's idea is the best. Although the Falling Star Alliance is not strong, after all, there are many sects, and they are well informed. They are the most suitable to find them. Okay, everyone, let's go home. There are ready-made food and wine here. Others don't want to eat it, but we can enjoy it. Many disciples behind him shouted loudly, instantly sweeping away their previous dejection. The caravan of the incense cult continued to move forward for nearly 20 days. During this time, there were countless sects waiting by the roadside like the Heaven's Dock, wanting to serve the incense cult. However, the disciples leading the way had learned from their previous experience. When they saw the leaders of these sects, they were not polite and directly scolded them. The caravan did not stop at all and directly sped past in front of them. At first, Zhang Xiaohua was wondering if the incense cult's way of doing things was appropriate, and whether it would offend them. However, what he saw in front of him showed him the grandeur of the super sects in Jianghu. Those rejected sects were all submissive and apologized loudly. Many of them even bowed deeply. They did not dare to get up even when the caravan was far away. Where was the anger of being rejected? Every time he saw this, Zhang Xiaohua, who was walking at the back, secretly shook his head. Servility, this is servility. If such a sect only wants to find a solid backer and does not consider its own strength, how can it stand tall in Jianghu? Not to mention 100 years, 1,000 years, or even 10,000 years. Alas, this guy is standing, oh no, sitting on the David's deer, talking is easy. How would he know the difficulty of establishing a sect? If they did not flatter each other, these sects might not be able to hold on for even 10 years. After traveling for nearly a month, the weather gradually became humid, and the surrounding environment also changed. The number of mountains gradually increased, and the number of forests on the mountains also gradually increased. Moreover, there were many low and bare small stone peaks appearing from time to time, as if the forest was made of stone. Of course, the food also became spicy and sour. However, Zhang Xiaohua usually did not eat much, so he did not care. On this day, after passing through the dense forest, there was another lush forest in front of them. Sitting on Huanhuan's back, Zhang Xiaohua, who had a breakthrough in the incantation of God traction, suddenly released his divine sense and looked forward. A few miles away, there was a ropeway in the air. A man in green stood steadily on the ropeway with his hands clasped behind his back, moving with the wind. -3. Chapter 5:14. This was the gap between the two mountains. The mountains were not very high, but the distance between the two mountains was very far, and the mountain stream was even more frighteningly deep. A rope bridge was placed between the two mountains. It was like a black line that swayed in the wind. The man in black stood leisurely in the middle of the cable bridge, with his hands behind his back, facing the direction of the fragrant religion's convoy, and quietly waiting. From time to time, the mountain wind would blow, causing the man's hair and clothes to flutter, but the man's eyes did not blink as he stared straight ahead. Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense shrouded over, but the man did not notice. It was only when Zhang Xiaohua carefully sized him up that he slightly frowned and raised his chin slightly, a little surprised in his heart. But when he used his qi to examine carefully, Zhang Xiaohua had already moved far away from him. Could this be some kind of welcoming gimmick from some sect? Zhang Xiaohua secretly muttered. Zhang Xiaohua wanted to categorize the man blocking their way as a threat, but along the way, the cult of fragrance had been very brazen, and did not hide their itinerary at all. The various sects had also been waiting for them on the road in advance, but they had not seen anything that was disadvantageous to the cult of fragrance. Gradually, Zhang Xiaohua began to understand why the disciples of the cult of fragrance had said that his escort was just for show. That was because wherever they went, people would welcome them with open arms, so who would have evil intentions? But at this time, the convoy was still very far from the cable bridge, and the man in black did not notice the arrival of the convoy. His body did not reveal any killing intent, so he could not tell whether he was a friend or foe. After the time it took to eat a meal, the cable bridge was close. The man in black suddenly raised the corner of his eyes, and a smile appeared on his lips. His body moved slightly, and in an instant, an invisible killing intent immediately spread out from his body, and rushed straight towards the fragrant religion's convoy. Zhang Xiaohua was riding the David's deer at the very back of the group. When he saw the blue-robed man move and release an imposing aura, he knew in his heart that this guy was here to cause trouble. He was not angry but happy. To be honest, he had been tired of traveling for a while. If someone wanted to challenge the prestige of the fragrant religion, he would be happy to watch. At this moment, the disciple leading the way had already realized that there was a suspension bridge up ahead. Just as he was about to warn the group, a low harumph suddenly sounded. "Halt the convoy!" It was Lord Peacock Kong's order. No one dared to dawdle. They immediately stopped the carriages and Peacock ordered, "Go and see if there's any movement on the suspension bridge." She did not call out his name directly. The disciple who was leading the way immediately obeyed the order and urged his horse forward a few steps to the side of the mountain. When he saw the green-robed man on the rope bridge clearly, he sucked in a breath of cold air and shouted, "That man, who are you? Why are you blocking my path? Why are you blocking my incense cult's advance?" The green-robed man's pale face was filled with contempt. He whispered, "You're just an outer disciple and yet you're so arrogant. What makes you think you have the right to ask for my name? Go and tell your Lord Kong that I don't welcome you. Tell your Lord Kong to come and face her death. After she dies, I'll throw you off this cliff one by one." The disciple of the incense cult had never been humiliated like this before. He was about to jump down from his horse when he heard an angry shout. "Come back, don't you know what you're worth?" After that, a white figure flew out from the middle of the carriage and headed straight for the side of the mountain. Seeing his lord coming down, the disciple did not dare to make a move. He quickly bowed and retreated. Peacock looked at the figure on the suspension bridge and then looked around. She ordered, "Protect the carriages carefully. Do not let this man's accomplice take advantage of the chaos to rob us. The goods in the convoy are worthless, but they care about the reputation of the incense cult." "I understand." After that, he ran back to the carriages and rearranged the guards to protect them. Zhang Xiaohua, the fake bodyguard, was relieved of his duties. A disciple of the incense cult stood not far from him with a long sword in hand. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua jumped down from his David's deer and sat in the carriage. Forceful poked his head out of the carriage and asked in fear, "Uncle, what's going on?" Zhang Xiaohua frowned. "Why are you shouting again?" It's nothing. It seems like someone is blocking our way. Another offering of food and wine?" Forceful shook his head. "We meet them every few days, hide in the carriage and don't talk. It seems like they're looking for trouble." "What? Looking for trouble? How dare someone touch the tail of the incense cult? Oh no, this is bad. They wouldn't dare to go to Liangshan if they weren't confident. Since they dared to come, they must have some confidence. Uncle, we're just medicine apprentices. They won't kill us, right? Nonsense, they're going to kill us all. They're going to keep you alive to report to the incense cult." Zhang Xiaohua looked at him with contempt. A child who has never been in the martial arts world is so ignorant. As expected, Forceful's face turned pale and he said with a trembling voice, "Uncle, we're relatives. If you run, don't forget to take me with you." Zhang Xiaohua glared at him. "Even the disciples of the incense cult can't escape. Where can I go?" "You should pray for Master Kong. Only if she wins will we be safe." Forceful nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. Okay, I'll pray now." Uncle, are you not coming? Zhang Xiaohua was annoyed. I'm not sincere. You do it. Then he released his spiritual sense and admired from afar. He no longer cared about forceful. Peacock came to the end of the suspension bridge and looked at the surrounding terrain. The bridge was very long and connected the two places. It was the only way. Below the bridge was a deep mountain stream. Inside the stream were countless trees. Everything was green as far as the eye could see. With a plan in mind, Peacock asked calmly, "The heroes in front, why are you so unfamiliar? What's the matter with you stopping my convoy?" Although the voice was faint, it was transmitted directly into the ears of the man in green. Due to the wind, he could not hear it clearly. The man in green laughed coldly. "I'm Liang Tsunxiu. I'm a nobody. Even if Master Kong knows my name, you won't know where I come from. Since I know you're Master Kong and I'm blocking your only way, what do you think I can do? I'll just take your life and kill everyone in the incense cult." "Hee, you have a good plan. But just you alone? Don't you think that's wishful thinking? Lord Kong, you really live like a prince. Although there are many people in the Aroma sect, the only one who can make me act is Lord Kong. I only need to kill you, and the others will be as easy as squashing ants, won't they?" Peacock nodded. "You're right. But I'm curious. Who in Jianghu wouldn't flatter the incense cult when they see them? Why do you have to go against the incense cult?" "Ha!" Liang Tsunxiu laughed. "Master Kong, if you're trying to get information from me, Liang, then you're wrong. Come, let me see what a disciple of the incense cult is capable of." After saying that, he raised his hands, which had been behind his back, in front of him, holding a steel knife in each hand. Not only was Zhang Xiaohua stunned, even Peacock frowned. As the saying goes, 10 days to practice the fist, 100 days to practice the blade, 1,000 days to practice the spear, 10,000 days to practice the sword. In this Jianghu, most of the people who were highly skilled in martial arts used swords. Only by using swords could they display their profound internal energy and superb moves. Of course, there were exceptions. Zhang Xiaohua's fist training was much more strenuous than her sword training. However, since this inexplicable Liang Tsunxiu dared to stop the inner disciple of the incense cult, Peacock, no one would believe that he did not have some degree of confidence. This meant that his cultivation of the saber was not low, and he must have a unique skill. Moreover, he was wielding a pair of blades rarely seen in Jianghu. Flexible sword, another flexible sword. Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. She could not help but think of Qin Shihue from the Tenrya sect. That person also wielded a flexible sword, but he was used to slashing and killing. Peacock was dressed in a snow-white robe, holding a flexible sword that swayed in the wind from time to time. The sword was slender, and the beauty was graceful. It was a picture of beauty. Peacock stepped onto the suspension bridge and walked forward steadily. Even though she was slender, the bridge swayed with every step she took. However, Liang Tsunxiu was standing very steadily. His body swayed along with the bridge as if he was one with the bridge. When Peacock saw this, she was not surprised. She waited for Liang Tsunxiu to come closer before she swung her flexible sword. The flexible sword pointed diagonally towards the sky. Peacock laughed coldly and said, "Liang Tsunxiu, I don't care who you are. If you stop now, it's not too late. Turn back now and I'll pretend that nothing happened. But if you wait for me to strike and chop off your head, it'll be too late for regrets." Liang Tsunxiu crossed his blades and slashed them across the air. He laughed. "Until now, you're still thinking of winning without a fight? Are the inner disciples of the incense cult also fond of using logic to convince others?" As he spoke, he stomped his foot and levitated into the air. He shouted, "Since you're not going to make a move, then I'll teach you what it means to strike first." Before he finished his sentence, the blade in his right hand was raised and slashed towards Peacock's head like a rainbow. Peacock did not back down. She laughed coldly. "I see that you don't know any etiquette. You don't look like a useless disciple from any sect. Let me teach you what it means to be a real master." Then, like a flash of lightning, Peacock charged forward. The flexible sword in her hand was aimed at Liang Tsengshu's throat. The speed of the flexible sword was faster than the steel blade. If Liang Tsengshu did not dodge, the flexible sword would have penetrated his vitals first. However, Liang Tsengshu did not pull back his saber to counter the attack. Instead, he made a circle with his left hand and flicked his wrist outwards. The other steel saber blocked the direction of the soft sword. Please vote. 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 -3. Chapter 5:15. Peacock's flexible sword was about to be blocked by Liang Tsengshu's steel saber. But just as the two weapons clashed, the upper half of the flexible sword lifted up and dodged the steel saber. Like a snake, the flexible sword continued to stab towards Liang Tsengshu's face. This move was surprisingly similar to Zhang Xiaohua's dream-chasing sword. Liang Tsengshu dared not slow down. He quickly turned sideways and levitated into the air. His toes stood on the steel chain of the suspension bridge. The steel saber in his left hand continued to lift upwards in an attempt to deflect the flexible sword away. The steel saber in his right hand missed. While the saber in his right hand missed its target, Liang Tsengshu tightened his grip and thrust forward. It was a sword move. Peacock was also in midair. Seeing her flexible sword blocked and the other steel saber coming towards her abdomen, she took a deep breath and bent her flexible sword like an arm. Ding! A crisp sound was heard. It was the steel saber. Her body used the momentum to flip upwards. Just like Liang Tsengshu, she stood on the other steel chain of the suspension bridge. The exchange of moves between the two happened in the blink of an eye, so it was hard to tell who was better. However, both of them had a general understanding of each other. They held their breaths and secretly adjusted their internal breathing, looking at each other with caution. Zhang Xiaohua used his divine sense to observe the battle from afar. He saw a chain bridge flying across the sky. The two of them stood on the iron chain that was trembling slightly in the mountain wind. Their bodies were suspended in the air, their clothes were fluttering in the wind, and their black hair was flowing elegantly. They really looked like two immortals riding the wind. Peacock and Liang Tsengshu stared at each other, waiting for the moment when the other would reveal an opening. But after a moment, where would there be an opening to be found? Thus, one of them shouted and the other reprimanded. Both sabers and flexible swords danced in the air. Once again, they were engaged in battle. Liang Tsengshu's twin sabers were like two dragons emerging from the sea, stirring up ripples of blue waves. His saber technique was like the autumn wind sweeping away fallen leaves, airtight and threatening. Peacock's flexible sword was like a snake spitting out its tongue, nimble in its swiftness. It was nimble and flexible to the extreme, and the sword technique was also like lightning that swept across the sky, leaving no trace behind. Zhang Xiaohua observed the moves of martial arts with his divine sense. Generally speaking, he could easily see the flaws and the trajectory of the moves. He could predict the enemy's moves. However, at this moment, he suddenly realized that he had the same feeling as the mysterious old man in the underground hall of the nameless villa. That battle was the most dangerous battle that Zhang Xiaohua had ever faced since she became a cultivator. That was why she could still remember it vividly. In that battle, Zhang Xiaohua's consciousness could no longer detect the mysterious old man's moves. She lost the advantage of being the first to strike and fell into a difficult situation. And now, in her consciousness, the two's saber and saber skills gave Zhang Xiaohua the same feeling. It was as if she could not see through their moves. Even though Peacock was wearing a veil, Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense had once penetrated the veil and saw her face. She was only a young girl in her early 20s. Liang Tsengshu was even more so. He looked like he was about 25 years old, slightly older than Peacock. This meant that they were young men about the same age as Zhang Xiaohua's second brother. Yet their martial arts were so good that they were almost as good as the mysterious old man. If they were in Jianghu, they would be considered to be very powerful. Peacock was easy to deal with. She was an outstanding inner disciple of the Superbig sect, Aroma cult. Which sect did Liang Tsengshu belong to? The Righteous Alliance? But if he was from the Righteous Alliance, how could he face the Incense Order without hiding? The Dalan Temple? Liang Zhengxu was not a monk. Of course, the people of the Dalan Temple were monks. Not being a monk did not mean that he was not from the Dalan Temple. But then again, if he was not a monk, he could not have received the true teachings of the Dalan Temple. Zhang Xiaohua began to understand. This guy was probably the same as Qin Shirwei. Maybe he was from the Dragon God sect. But even Qin Shirwei, the disciple of Garuda, did not seem to have such skills. Then which heavenly king's disciple was this Liang Zhengxu? Zhang Xiaohua did not know who the heavenly kings of the Dragon God sect were, but with such skills, he must be a disciple of someone of high status. Maybe he was a disciple of the Dragon God sect's leader. Just as Zhang Xiaohua was making wild guesses, the battle became even more intense. But as the battle dragged on, it gradually became clear who had the upper hand. Both of them were using their superior qigong. Their bodies flew back and forth on the iron chain, and the sound of swords clashing could be heard. Other people might not be able to see anything, except for the two who were fighting with their lives on the line. Perhaps only Zhang Xiaohua, who was watching with his divine sense at the back of the caravan, could tell what was going on. Peacock's sword moves were often like a stroke of genius. Zhang Xiaohua's consciousness struggled to capture them. But of course, she could still see them clearly. On the other hand, Liang Zhengxu's sword moves were gradually becoming more obvious as time passed. Zhang Xiaohua did not have to spend too much effort to see the trajectory of the two swords. Although his sword skills were also very good, but it was already at a disadvantage. In Zhang Xiaohua's mind, if there were no accidents, Peacock should be able to kill Liang Zhengxu with her flexible sword. Of course, the result of the battle did not necessarily determine this. At least, the depth and endurance of one's internal energy was a key factor. In this aspect, Peacock, as a female, was at a disadvantage. Sure enough, after a while, Peacock's movements slowed down. Her forehead was covered in sweat. Peacock fainted and escaped from the battle. She stood at the side and smiled. "You are very skilled. Could it be that you are a master from the Tenria sect?" Liang Zhengxu saw this and sheathed his swords. "Master Peacock, you have good taste. If I admit that I am a disciple of the Tenria sect, I am sure you will not doubt me. But do you think I am?" Peacock nodded. "Although there are many sects in Jianghu, other than the Tenria sect, I can't think of any other sections." "Even if you don't admit it, what can you do?" Liang Zhengxu laughed. "If you say I am, then I am. If you say I am not, then I am not." Peacock sneered. "As long as I capture you, who would not know who you are?" She then took out a jade bottle and crushed it. She tilted her head back and poured the contents into her mouth. She then threw the jade bottle into the endless forest below the suspension bridge. Liang Zhengxu was not surprised by Peacock's actions. He too handed his swords to his left hand and his right hand took out a pill. He popped it into his mouth and held his swords in alert. "Haha, other than the Tenria sect, who else in Jianghu can make the 7 returns pill that replenishes internal energy like the Tenria sect? If I don't admit it, wouldn't it show that the Tenria sect is ignorant?" "Haha!" Liang Zhengxu retorted. When Peacock heard this, a cold light flashed in her eyes. Then, she silently channeled her inner energy into the soft sword. Once the inner energy entered the soft sword, it immediately let out a dragon's roar. Then, it trembled a little and the tip of the sword faintly emitted a light. "Sword ray?" Liang Zhengxu whispered. "I didn't expect Master Peacock's internal energy to reach such a level. The Tenria sect, you really live up to your name. From your voice, you sound like a girl in her 20s. To have such achievements, you are worthy of respect." When Zhang Xiaohua saw this, he was also surprised. He had heard Valley Master Nie talk about this sword aura before and knew that it was a legendary thing in Jianghu. This girl who was younger than his second brother actually had this kind of skill. She really could not be underestimated. Of course, although Zhang Xiaohua was surprised, he wasn't too surprised. After all, this girl was wielding the jade water sword. She only used a fraction of her internal energy to create a sword ray that was a foot long. On the cable bridge, although Liang Zhengxu was astonished, The expression on his face was not too obvious. It was as if everything was within his expectations. Liang Xingshu slowly raised his twin blades, as a faint red glow appeared on his face. Furthermore, the twin blades that were slanted towards the sky gradually emitted a red glow. The entire blade slowly grew larger, as a red glow flickered on the edges of the blades. Sword ray! Peacock couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. The sword ray on the soft sword retracted. Zhang Xiaohua was also surprised. Liang Xingshu's blades could produce something similar to a sword ray. Could it be a sword ray? But the sword ray came from the tip of the sword, and this sword ray came from such a long blade. Was it not more powerful? Zhang Xiaohua couldn't hear Peacock's exclamation, so he didn't know the name of the sword ray. But when he saw the sword ray on Peacock's soft sword retreating, he knew that Peacock was surprised. He was also curious. So, he said to Chang in the carriage, "What's going on in front? Why aren't we leaving? I need to pee." "Forget it, I'm going to relieve myself." Then, he stood up. Chang was scared and quickly pulled on his sleeve. "Uncle, is the situation in front bad? Don't leave me behind. We're really relatives." Zhang Xiaohua was helpless. "How would I know the situation in front?" "Sit carefully. We're just medicine boys. If the situation in front is bad, we'll be the ones kowtowing and begging for mercy." "Uncle, didn't you say that they wanted to kill us?" It doesn't matter who we're going to be, we'll be their medicine boy. We're pill refinement professionals. Maybe they're here to rob us. Alright, I'm going to relieve myself." Then, without waiting for Chang to say anything, he lifted the curtain and poked his head out. Although the school of fragrance disciples were on guard, their attention was focused in front of them. They wanted to know the outcome of their family's battle. Who would pay attention to Rejuvenation Valley's carriage? Therefore, no one noticed Zhang Xiaohua's appearance. Delighted, Zhang Xiaohua used his consciousness to scan the area. No one was paying attention to him. When he landed, he immediately made a hand seal and used the earth escape technique to reach the other end of the suspension bridge. However, the mountain stream between the two connected mountains was too deep. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't get too close. He could only hide at the top of the mountain and sneak his head out to watch the two people on the suspension bridge using their trump cards. Please vote, 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 vote. -3. Chapter 516. On the bridge, Peacock asked. "Liang Xingshu, which heavenly king of the Tenria sect do you belong to?" "To be honest, I have never heard of any heavenly king who is proficient in sword chi. If I say I am the disciple of Sakura, would you believe me? What is there not to believe? But Sakura. Mastering one technique, mastering all techniques, mastering all techniques, nothing is impossible. Don't you think so, Master Kong?" Peacock was helpless. She smiled and said, "Since you have said so, I cannot kill you. If Lord Sakura is angered, it is not something a small disciple of the incense cult like me can bear. Then I will take you and let my master deal with you." After that, the green sword radiance on the flexible sword became even brighter. Like before, she floated over and slashed at Liang Xingshu. This was what Qin Shihua had done previously. Liang Xingshu did not show any weakness. He swung his two swords and the red sword chi followed along with the swords to meet the attack. Thus, the green sword radiance and the red sword chi clashed together again. At this moment, the entire scene was even more beautiful. Not only were the green-clothed man and the white-clothed fairy flying back and forth above the suspension bridge, even the red blade aura and the green sword aura were radiating brilliance. They would occasionally collide with each other. However, at this moment, there was no longer a ding-dang sound like before. Instead, there was a ci-ci sound. "Sword chi?" Zhang Xiaohua, who was hiding in the valley, nodded his head. The long sword was called Sword Ray, and the steel blade was called Saber Aura. It was a fitting name. Furthermore, Zhang Xiaohua could tell with his divine sense that the power of the Sword Ray and Saber Aura was stronger than before. Even the sound of air being sliced could be heard. He could easily tell that the martial arts of these two people had reached a level rarely seen in Jianghu. Until now, although Zhang Xiaohua knew that the sword radiance and sword qi were extremely powerful skills, but as to how powerful they were, she was still confused. Although Nie Qianyu and Valley Master Nie had told her before, but it was all hearsay. She did not really understand. So, watching the two fight, she felt that it was much more powerful than before. But why would it become something that people in Jianghu would change their faces when talking about it? She could not figure it out. On the bridge, Peacock and Liang Tsangxu were evenly matched. After fighting for almost half a day, there was no clear winner. But in Zhang Xihua's mind, she could see that the sword qi on Liang Tsangxu's steel sword had dimmed. It seemed to be fading away. Maybe it was because of the lack of internal energy. Although Liang Tsangxu had been trying to feign a way to escape from the battle and find an opportunity to consume the pill, Peacock was also scheming. She kept on fighting and did not give him the opportunity to do so. Therefore, after the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Liang Tsangxu was not paying attention and Peacock's soft sword pierced through his green robes, piercing a large hole in it. When Peacock was about to slash at his waist, Liang Tsangxu hurriedly raised his steel saber in an attempt to block it. At this time, the saber aura on the steel saber was already thin, and when the two weapons clashed, there was a crisp sound, like a piece of paper being torn apart, and the steel saber was actually cut in two. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua frowned. In the fight just now, both of their swords had clashed several times and there was no damage. Even when the sword qi and sword qi were at their peak, it was not like this. Now that the sword qi was fading, it was broken by the sword qi. Could it be that the sword qi's power lay in its sharpness? Was it indestructible? Sure enough, Liang Tsangxu saw that the steel sword was destroyed and was shocked. With a wave of his hand, he threw the broken sword at Peacock like a hidden weapon. At the same time, he exerted force on his feet and flew towards the other end of the suspension bridge. Peacock saw the steel sword flying towards her and sneered. With a light wave of her soft sword, the steel sword was cut into two and fell into the empty valley. Then she too used the secret qigong of the cult of incense and chased after him. Seeing the two of them gradually disappear into the distance, Zhang Xiaohua frowned. He was willing to follow and watch the show, but between the two mountains, there was only a suspension bridge. If he went over, he would be seen by others. If he used the earth burrowing technique, the valley was very deep. If he went from the bottom of the valley to the top, it would take a lot of effort. Whether he should go or not, it was a very difficult question. Thinking about this, Zhang Xiaohua released his consciousness to observe from afar. But when he swept his consciousness over the opposite cliff, he was stunned. It turned out that on the other side of the mountain, there were actually two young men dressed in green robes who were dressed similarly to Liang Tsangxu. They were also holding two sabers in their hands, and there was a faint red saber aura on the surface of the sabers. "This is bad!" Zhang Xiaohua secretly groaned in his heart. Just now, he had only paid attention to the two people fighting on the cable bridge, and had not paid attention to the other side. Moreover, looking at Liang Tsangxu's behavior, he had thought that he had come alone. He did not know that Liang Tsangxu had set up an ambush on the other side. Zhang Xiaohua knew that if it was 1-on-1, the three of them would not be Peacock's match. If it was 2-on-1, Peacock might be able to escape. But if it was 3-on-1, Peacock would not even have the chance to escape. It must be said that the three of them were very clear about the strength of the cult of incense. Should he call Peacock back? Seeing that Peacock was about to reach the northern ocean, Zhang Xiaohua hesitated. It was too late for him to go back and inform the cult of incense's disciples. Besides, how was he going to tell them? Even if he called Peacock back now, they might not listen. After all, he was just an apprentice of the cult of incense. Yes, an apprentice who got in through the back door. Sigh, it can only be me. Oh, it's me, Xiaoxia. No, it's me, the apprentice. Zhang Xiaohua smacked his lips, a little proud. This inner disciple of the cult of incense needs the help of a little apprentice like me. Hee, how arrogant. With that thought, he formed a hand seal and burrowed into the depths of the cliff. Peacock and Liang Tsungshu took the shortcut by using a rope bridge. Zhang Xiaohua had to take the longer route to cover his tracks. He first burrowed from the peak to the bottom of the valley, then from one end of the valley to the other, then from the bottom of the valley to the peak. The whole process was to practice burrowing through the earth. Of course, he could also use the levitation technique at the bottom of the valley. But there was the danger of being discovered by the cult of incense's disciples at the peak. It was better to just burrow into the ground. The valley was unusually deep. Zhang Xiaohua took a long time to reach the bottom of the valley. Releasing his consciousness to determine the direction, Zhang Xiaohua continued burrowing towards the opposite side. But just as Zhang Xiaohua was about to reach the bottom of the valley, there was a sudden change. Zhang Xiaohua, who was burrowing through the earth, suddenly saw a bright light. He appeared in an extremely narrow cave. The cave was on the path of Zhang Xiaohua's earth burrowing, and Zhang Xiaohua's consciousness did not detect it. Zhang Xiaohua, who was standing in the middle of the cave, was stunned. It was the first time he encountered someone burrowing into another person's cave. Naturally, he looked left and right. This was a small cave that could only fit 4 to 5 people. The cave was illuminated by several fist-sized luminous pearls, allowing him to see clearly. When he took a closer look, Zhang Xiaohua could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Not far from him, there was a skeleton that was twice as tall as him standing there. Zhang Xiaohua frowned. He did not go forward. Instead, he used his consciousness to scan the skeleton. This should be a human skeleton. Well, Zhang Xiaohua had never seen a real human skeleton. But 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head, it should be a human. There was a faint fluctuation of energy coming from the bare fingers of the arm. Normally, Zhang Xiaohua would have gone forward and taken it for himself without hesitation. But at this time, he was somewhat hesitant. Because the fluctuation of energy was somewhat obscure. It was not the frequency that he was used to. Moreover, on the skull of the skeleton, there was a black hole that was bigger than a fist. It was as if it was pulled out by a hand. Of course, the prerequisite was that there was such a big hand. Carefully observing the fluctuation in the skeleton's hand, one was a black jade slip and the other was a small red ring. Zhang Xiaohua had seen many jade slips, but it was the first time he saw a black jade slip. Moreover, the jade slip was faintly heart-shaped. Zhang Xiaohua had never seen the small ring. One side of the ring was a bright ring, and the other side was a ball-like thing. Upon closer inspection, it was somewhat in the shape of a flame. To take or not to take? Zhang Xiaohua scratched his head. But thinking of the anxious peacock above, there was not much time left for Zhang Xiaohua to hesitate. Moreover, if he saved the peacock, he would have to take the long way back to the carriage. He would definitely not have the time to come here to take these 2 items. Thus, Zhang Xiaohua clenched his teeth, and with a wave of his hand, the pitch-black jade slip and fiery red ring flew directly into his hand. Just as the 2 items touched the skeleton's finger, the skeleton immediately collapsed and turned into ashes. However, just as the skeleton fell to the ground, a black gas spread out from the skeleton and floated directly into the soil on the top of the cave. The moment the gas touched the soil, it immediately seeped into it. Then, the energy in the cave fluctuated greatly. The luminous pearl around the cave also flashed brilliantly. When Zhang Xiaohua looked carefully, he found that he was not standing in the previous cave that could only accommodate 4 or 5 people, but in a magnificent hall. Zhang Xiaohua frowned. First, he thought for a while. Just now, he only held the jade slip and the ring in his hand. He did not feel his body move. It was only the black gas on the skeleton that caused this change. Then he looked at his hands. The jade slip and the ring were both in his hand. Could it be that he had encountered another array? Immediately, Zhang Xiaohua naturally thought of the 3 auspicious treasures array. He and Qin Shirui had been trapped in it before and had experienced the changes in the array. They knew that what they saw in the array might not be real. So, Zhang Xiaohua first put the 2 items into his arms and then released his divine sense. As soon as he released his divine sense, Zhang Xiaohua's face turned pale and he was shocked. Recommend me. -3. Chapter 5:17. Zhang Xiaohua's eyes were looking at a resplendent hall, while his divine sense was located in a space shrouded in pitch-black gas. When his divine sense came into contact with this gas, it was polluted and blocked, unable to extend even half an inch. Therefore, he did not know whether he was still in the original cave or not. The most terrifying thing was that when the pitch-black gas came into contact with his consciousness, it seemed to have a mind of its own. Not only did it pollute his consciousness, it also followed his consciousness and invaded Zhang Xiaohua's Naiwen Palace. When had Zhang Xiaohua ever encountered such a situation? His face was already pale with fright and his heart was filled with regret. If he was just passing by, why did he have to be so greedy to take other people's things? Great, now he had brought trouble to his doorstep. In just a short moment, that pitch-black gas had already invaded Zhang Xiaohua's Naiwen Palace after he retracted his consciousness. Zhang Xiaohua did not dare to be negligent, and immediately sat down cross-legged, activating the second level of God's guidance to resist the black gas. But God's guidance was only a cultivation technique used to forge the consciousness and did not have any offensive capabilities. How could it resist an external attack? Zhang Xiaohua's God's guidance had just been activated when the black gas that had entered his Naiwen Palace immediately spread throughout the entire Naiwen Palace. Following that, it bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it pounced towards the Dan core floating in the middle of his Naiwen Palace. What should he do? Zhang Xiaohua was at his wits' end. However, the moment the black gas touched the Dan core, the restriction covering the Dan core flashed with a golden light. It was as bright as the sun and immediately lit up the entire Naiwen Palace. The golden light was like a golden needle that pierced the black gas that had invaded the Naiwen Palace. The black gas that had invaded the Naiwen Palace became much thinner. Then, the 365 talismans in the golden restriction appeared clearly, and rotated like flowing lights. Then, one of the talismans projected a huge shadow in the air. It was the image of a huge rooster. The golden rooster raised its head and crowed to the sky. Zhang Xiaohua, who was sitting cross-legged, actually heard the crisp sound of the rooster's crowing. The black gas that had been thinned by the golden light surged incessantly as if it was afraid of the rooster's crowing. After the golden rooster crowed, it opened its mouth and sucked the black gas in the distance. As if there was a great attraction force, the black gas that had coiled around the Naiwen Palace was immediately sucked into the rooster's mouth. In a breath's time, the black gas that had been thinned by the golden light was swept away. The shadow of the rooster flapped its wings, as if it was not satisfied. Then, with a flash of brilliance, it shrank back into the talisman. At this moment, the talisman that had swallowed the black gas was also flowing with brilliant colors. Not long after, it flashed its original form, which was a small rooster, quietly floating beside the rabbit talisman, motionless. Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat, and she immersed her divine sense into the rooster talisman. She felt that it did not consume as much divine sense as last time, and she could clearly see the 365 incantations that formed the rooster talisman. Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed. Although she had not completely comprehended the rabbit talisman, she had already completed more than half of it. It was just that she had encountered a bottleneck, and could not continue. This time, by chance, she was able to profit from a disaster. Not only did she eliminate the black gas that had invaded her Naiwen Palace, but she also activated another rooster talisman, which provided unexpected convenience for her to comprehend the innate divine restriction. However, thinking about the danger just now, Zhang Xiaohua had a lingering fear, and she did not dare to release her divine sense easily again. Yes, although she did not know what kind of destructive power the black gas had on her, and she did not know the consequences of the black gas invading her Dan core, but thinking that the black gas could enter her Dan core through her divine sense, she knew that this thing was definitely not easy to deal with. Standing in the hall, Zhang Xiaohua kept looking left and right, thinking of a way to escape. Her divine sense could not be outside, so she could only rely on her own eyes. However, she did not know whether everything in front of her was real or not, so how could she find the exit? However, Based on the information that she had just explored with her divine sense, Zhang Xiaohua faintly felt that she should still be in the cave just now. However, because she had taken the 2 items from the skeleton's hand, she had triggered the restriction, which released the unknown black gas and wrapped her in it. Everything in front of her should be the illusion of the restriction. If it was any other time, perhaps Zhang Xiaohua would have gone forward to explore and see what the hall in the illusion looked like. Perhaps she would have used her cultivation in array formations to break through the restriction using the normal method. After all, there were not many restrictions in this world, and every bit of practice was a little bit better. However, now that the peacock on the mountain top was facing an ambush from 3 masters, if Zhang Xiaohua did not go to help, then the entire convoy from the School of Fragrance would be annihilated today. The life and death of the School of Fragrance may have nothing to do with Zhang Xiaohua, but in this way, Zhang Xiaohua's plan of staying in the Rejuvenation Valley for half a year to go to the School of Fragrance to inquire about Zhang Xiaohu's whereabouts would be completely destroyed. This was something that Zhang Xiaohua absolutely could not tolerate. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua reached into her money pouch and took out the chasing dream dagger that she had not used for a long time. With the dagger in her left hand, Zhang Xiaohua formed a seal with her right hand, and with a shake of her body, she directly dove downwards. However, just as her figure disappeared into the ground, she felt that her feet were as hard as a metal plate, and she could no longer move forward. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua did not dare to use her divine sense to investigate. She only swung the chasing dream dagger in her left hand and pierced it directly. Following the piercing of the dagger, a warm current from the nameless part of her left arm flowed along her left arm and into the dagger. She seemed to hear a light "pa" sound, and then a cool current flowed from the dagger. If Zhang Xiaohua dared to release her divine sense at this moment, she would be able to see that following the penetration of the dagger, the black gas that enveloped the area was violently tumbling. Countless dense black gas were sucked in by the dagger, and then flowed along the nameless meridians in Zhang Xiaohua's left arm into that mysterious place. In a moment, a rather large hole had been pierced through the black gas, and Zhang Xiaohua's figure could move again. She passed through the black gas and gradually dove downwards. When Zhang Xiaohua's figure completely disappeared, the tumbling black gas gradually filled up the hole. Not long after, it returned to a complete sphere. Zhang Xiaohua, who had dove underground, was like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. She did not dare to stay any longer. She held the chasing dream dagger in her hand and dove downwards for another 100 feet. Only then did she follow her senses and move forward. When she felt that it was safe, she let out a sigh of relief and tried to release her divine sense. Fortunately, she had already left the black gas. At this moment, the cool current from Zhang Xiaohua's left arm had completely flowed into the nameless part, and there were no longer any abnormalities. Zhang Xiaohua waved the chasing dream dagger a few times in the air and felt that it was normal. Only then did she relax. Then, she carefully released her divine sense upwards, afraid that it would come into contact with the black gas again. This time, it was not a big deal. Unexpectedly, it was an unfamiliar place. Zhang Xiaohua frowned and did not dare to delay. She leaped up and used the earth escape technique to rush out of the ground. But because the earth escape technique was too deep, it took a long time for her head to emerge. Breathing in the fresh air from the ground, Zhang Xiaohua did not dare to rest. She immediately released her divine sense in all directions to search for Peacock. Not long after, she found the injured Lord Peacock Kong at the right rear. It turned out that Zhang Xiaohua was afraid just now and had actually dove a few li forward. At this moment, Peacock's situation was very critical. Fresh blood gushed out from her left arm, staining half of her arm. It seemed that the injury was not light. Her back was also injured by the blade and was dripping with blood. Her hair was disheveled and her forehead was covered in sweat. The light from the flexible sword in her right hand was only a little bit, as if it would disappear at any time. On the other hand, the 3 green-robed men, except for one of them who was wielding dual blades, Liang Xingshu and the other man were also wielding a single blade. That man's steel blade was obviously cut in half by Peacock. Moreover, the 2 men's chest lapels were also bleeding. They must have been injured by Peacock's flexible sword. However, the steel blades in the three men's hands were still very strong. Presumably, the consumption of internal energy was limited. At this moment, the three men were in a triangle formation, surrounding Peacock and attacking fiercely. The four blades were like minced meat. Peacock stood in the middle, desperately defending against the enemies. She did not care about her back or her left and right. She was exhausted from defending. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, she would die under the three men's blades. Unfortunately, she was surrounded in the middle and could not escape even if she wanted to. Even if she wanted to take a healing pill, it would be a pipe dream. However, even in this situation, Peacock's sword skills were swift and fierce, occasionally forcing one of the men to retreat. Seeing the situation, Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. He had only been trapped for a short while and the battle had turned into such a tragic situation. These three men really did not want to leave him alive. Therefore, he did not stay any longer. He held Chasing Dream in his hand and was about to release it. But at this moment, his heart skipped a beat. These four men, one of them was from the Immortal Tao sect and the other three were from the Tenrya sect. For the time being, if he revealed the Immortal Tao sect's skills, wouldn't he be asking for trouble? Forget about looking for second brother, even he himself would not be able to escape the clutches of the Immortal Tao sect and the Tenrya sect. But this Peacock had to be saved. What should he do? Suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua had a plan. He kept Chasing Dream in his arms and took out 3 small flags from his money pouch. They were the ones he had repaired in Rejuvenation Valley. With a twist of his body, he used Earth Escape. Zhang Xiaohua's Earth Escape was swift. In a short while, he had already reached the vicinity of the battle. At this moment, Peacock's strength was not enough. Her right arm was cut by a blade, and the light on her flexible sword immediately disappeared. She no longer dared to use her flexible sword to clash with the three men's blades. She could only dodge and look for opportunities to stab. Zhang Xiaohua did not show himself. He hid in the ground and quietly planted the 3 small flags far away in the surroundings of the battle. Then, one by one, he cast spells into the small flags. In his consciousness, the 3 small flags emitted a faint glow. A layer of invisible light gradually rose from the small flags. Slowly but quickly, it formed a large sphere and enveloped the 4 men in it. Peacock and Liang Tsangxu were in the midst of their battle. How would they notice Zhang Xiaohua's tricks from afar? Liang Tsangxu and the rest were just a few more moves away from injuring Peacock. By then, whether it was to kill, cut, or capture her alive, it would all be up to them. Peacock was also using up her last bit of inner energy. But at this moment, Peacock's inner energy was depleted. She could no longer raise her flexible sword. Her body swayed and fell to the ground. Peacock was shocked. She knew that her time was up. She did not get up. She closed her eyes and waited for the steel blades to reach her. Please give me your monthly vote. Recommend me. -3. Chapter 5:18. Peacock waited for a moment but did not see any steel blades coming at her. She understood and laughed coldly. Humph, if you want to capture me alive and interrogate me about the cult, then you are wasting your time. She opened her eyes, intending to look at them with contempt. However, the scene in front of her gave her a huge shock. The 3 men in green were not like what she expected, with steel blades in their hands, looking at her with menacing smiles. Instead, they were far away from her, each holding a different direction and performing different actions. Liang Tsangxu held the steel saber in his hand, and the saber aura on the saber flickered. From time to time, he would hack at something in the air with a terrified expression on his face. Then, he would put away the steel saber and spread out his body to perform lightness skill. However, no matter how hard he tried, he could only move about 3 to 5 feet around him. The other 2 unknown men in green, although their actions were different, but they were also panicking. Occasionally, they would fight with something in the air, dodging left and right, as if they were real. Peacock, who was sitting on the ground, suddenly felt a chill from the bottom of her heart. Was this a ghost? At this time, Peacock was exhausted, she could only raise her head and look around. But the scorching sun was right above her head, the shadows of the three men were cast on the ground, even she could feel the warmth of the sun. However, this warmth could not warm Peacock's cold heart. She still felt a chill run down her spine. But then, Peacock thought of another question. If Liang Tsingshu and the rest had encountered something inexplicable, what about her? Why didn't she think like them? Or, what she was seeing now, was not real? Peacock's lips trembled. Peacock touched the ground she was sitting on, then looked at the rope bridge in the distance. All of them were real. What the hell is going on? Did she fall into some kind of legendary formation? But if it was a legendary immortal formation, why was she fine, but the others encountered it? At that time, he was surrounded by three people. Just as Peacock was panicking and did not know what to do, the scene in front of her changed again. Liang Tsingshu and the other two suddenly ran as fast as they could in three different directions. In the beginning, the three of them were still running in different directions. But after a while, the three of them shot out in three different directions at the same time. Then they stopped. The three of them looked shocked and angry, but the anger could not hide the deep fear in their eyes. The three of them stood in different directions and exchanged glances with each other. At the same time, they looked at Peacock, who was sitting on the ground. When they saw that Peacock was still in the same condition as before, they understood something, nodded at the same time and leaped up. Peacock was shocked, thinking that they were going to attack again. But out of her expectations, the three of them actually chose a different direction, using their qinggong to fly away, not daring to turn back to look. What is going on? Peacock was even more depressed. While Peacock was depressed, Zhang Xiaohua was even more depressed. In his mind, he never intended to let the three of them leave. However, he wanted to hide it from Peacock. He isolated Peacock from the tripartite formation of the flag gate, and replaced it with the real world around her. Liang Tsingshu and the other two used illusions to confuse her. This increased the difficulty by quite a bit. Zhang Xiaohua had only seen the tripartite formation of the auspicious tripartite formation before, but he had never really used it himself. Even after the three small flags were repaired, he did not have the chance to use them. Today, he hastily used them, and when he was controlling the formation, it was inevitable that there would be mistakes. Furthermore, when the tripartite auspicious treasures was used by the three of them to inject vitality stones into the little flags, when Qin Shihua was trying to break the formation, she had affected the vitality of heaven and earth in the formation, causing one of the vitality stones to be depleted of vitality. This showed how much vitality the formation required. Zhang Xiaohua was all alone. He was relying on the vital energy in his meridians to sustain himself. The vitality of heaven and earth was not available for him to use. Hence, when he started to control the formation, Zhang Xiaohua felt his vital energy depleted, and had no choice but to take out vitality stones to replenish his vitality. He did not know how to inject his vitality directly into the little flags, so he could only absorb the vitality into his body, and then inject it into the little flags. During this process, there were bound to be some difficulties in controlling the formation, and on top of that, it was his first time controlling it, so mistakes were inevitable. Hence, when Liang Tsingshu and the rest were trying their best to run in three different directions, Zhang Xiaohua finally could not hold on any longer, and the entire formation collapsed. The light screen from the little flags was broken, and in an instant, the three of them had rushed far away from their original spot, and saw the true scene at the top of the mountain. Liang Tsingshu and the rest, who were scared out of their wits by the tripartite array, thought that this was the secret technique of the incense cult cast by the injured Peacock, and naturally, they did not dare to take another step forward. Who knows if they could escape just now, and if Peacock were to use this technique again, would they be able to escape by luck? Hence, the three of them split up and retreated in three different directions. Seeing the silhouettes of Liang Tsingshu and the rest disappear without a trace, Peacock let out a sigh of relief, and secretly thanked herself for escaping death, but at the same time, the pain from all over her body immediately overwhelmed her. Peacock had been fighting with all her might just now, and did not have time to tend to her injuries. She suddenly came to her senses, and quickly used her fingers to seal the acupuncture points on her arms to stop the bleeding, but when she wanted to get up, she found that she did not have the strength to do so. She sighed, and took out a pill, and put it into her mouth, and closed her eyes to adjust her breathing. From afar, Zhang Xiaohua released his consciousness, and monitored Liang Tsangxiu and the rest from afar. Only when they were far away did he retract his consciousness, and cast a spell, burrowed into the ground, and kept the little flags that were inserted into the ground. He looked at Peacock, who was adjusting her breathing, and did not stop, and went straight to the bottom of the mountain. This time, Zhang Xiaohua was more careful, and kept a distance from the path that they had used to burrow into the ground, and did not release his consciousness. Only when they were far away did he quietly poke his head out, and luckily, returned safely. Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment, and then released Chasing Dream, and quietly flew to the opposite mountain, and stopped in midair to protect Peacock, who was adjusting her breathing. Although this place was not far from where Peacock was adjusting her breathing, but Zhang Xiaohua would have to take a detour, right? It would be better to leave a backup plan, and not let Liang Tsangxiu catch her off guard, and he would not be able to save her in time. Looking at the disciples of the Cult of Fragrance, although they were still on guard, but they were already impatient, and stretched their necks to look at the suspension bridge. Even Manager Yang jumped onto the horse carriage, and shaded his eyes with his hand, and looked in that direction. While the disciples were unprepared, Zhang Xiaohua jumped out of the ground, and just as she was about to walk towards the horse carriage, her heart skipped a beat, and she steadily walked forward. When the disciple who was on guard heard the footsteps, he immediately raised his sword and looked back, and saw that it was Zhang Xiaohua coming out, and his face was filled with displeasure. "Ren Xiaoyao, why did you get off the carriage? Quickly go back and stay there." Zhang Xiaohua cupped her hands and said, Sir, may I ask what happened in front? Why did the horse carriage stop for so long without moving? Did the horse carriage break down? This little one has repaired horse carriages before. If there's a need, this little one can lend a hand." The disciple's face was filled with disdain, and he waved his hand disdainfully. "Don't worry so much, it's none of your business. You should obediently go back and sit down, and that will be helping us." Zhang Xiaohua hesitated, and raised her voice. Manager Yang. When the disciple saw that Zhang Xiaohua was shouting, his face was filled with anger, and he scolded. "What are you doing?" When Manager Yang heard Zhang Xiaohua's shout, he turned his head in astonishment, looked at her twice, and frowned. When Zhang Xiaohua saw that he had no intention of letting her go over, she sighed in her heart. "I want to give you credit, but you're ignoring me? Sigh, forget it, seeing that you've been nagging me earlier, I won't be calculative with you." Thus she raised both her hands, waved, and pointed to her nose, indicating that she had something to say. Manager Yang was anxious, and when he saw that Zhang Xiaohua was ignoring him, he was very unhappy, but Zhang Xiaohua persistently waved her hand, so he could only wave his hand at the disciple, indicating for Zhang Xiaohua to go over. When the disciple saw this, he snorted coldly, and hurriedly rushed to another place. Zhang Xiaohua cupped her hands at his back, and quickly ran to the front of Manager Yang's carriage, and with a lift of her leg, she got into the carriage. When Manager Yang saw that Zhang Xiaohua was so impetuous, he was even more displeased, and snorted coldly. "Ren Xiaoyao, do you have something to say? If there's nothing important, then stay in the carriage, don't find trouble for yourself." Zhang Xiaohua cupped her hands and said, "Manager Yang, this humble one just wants to ask, this carriage has already stopped for almost half a day, why aren't they moving?" Manager Yang sneered. "This is none of your business, quickly go back." After saying that, he ignored Zhang Xiaohua, and raised his head to look around again. Zhang Xiaohua whispered at the side, "Is there someone blocking the way, and not allowing us to move forward? Lord Kong has already gone over." Manager Yang glanced at her and said, "How do you know?" Zhang Xiaohua laughed. "Just now Lord Kong's voice was so loud, this humble one's ears are not deaf, how can I not hear? Since you know that the situation is urgent, you should stay in the carriage, this is not a place you should be." Manager Yang was still dissatisfied. Zhang Xiaohua saw the worry in his eyes, and knew that he was extremely unsure. If Peacock was killed, then they would also die. So she said, "We have been cooped up in the carriage for so long, and we are scared to death. I wonder what happened to Lord Kong. Sigh, who knows, I just hope that she is safe. It has already been almost half a day, there must be a result." Zhang Xiaohua probed. Manager Yang said disdainfully, "Lord Kong's martial arts is useless. The person who can hold her back must be a master in the martial arts world. How would we know about their battle?" Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment. If Lord Kong failed, then the other party must have already killed their way here. But they still haven't come. Maybe Lord Kong succeeded, and still hasn't returned. Zhang Xiaohua stopped talking. Manager Yang's eyes lit up. "Please vote, recommend." -3. Chapter 519. Manager Yang's eyes lit up as he thought to himself. Isn't that so? When experts fight, victory and defeat are usually decided within a few moves. Furthermore, Lord Kong hasn't returned for a long time and his opponent hasn't come either. The biggest possibility is that Lord Kong is injured and is currently recuperating. If I were to head over now, wouldn't I be able to gain some merit in front of Lord Kong? But what if he is still fighting? Manager Yang was a little hesitant. It's not a big deal. My martial arts is weak. Even if I go, the opponent may not pay attention to me. Moreover, if Master Kong is no match for him, we will die anyway. Why should we be afraid of dying sooner or later? After making up his mind, the dissatisfaction in Manager Yang's eyes immediately turned into gratitude. He patted Zhang Xiaohua's shoulder and said, "Wen Xiaoyao, what you said makes sense. However, you are only a medicine boy now. It's best if you hide in the carriage and don't make things difficult for me." Zhang Xiaohua saw that he had understood and smiled. "I am also bored, so I came out for a walk. I will go back now. After she finished speaking, she jumped off the carriage and slowly walked back. Manager Yang got into the carriage and took out a sword. He used his qing gong to come to the front of the carriage and asked, "How is Master Kong?" The disciple at the front saw Manager Yang coming over and nodded slightly. "I don't know yet. Master Kong has chased across the suspension bridge, and there has been no movement for a long time. I wonder how is the situation?" Manager Yang said. "You all guard here. I will go and take a look." After he finished speaking, he waved his sword and was about to go over when the disciple stopped him. "Manager Yang, you should sit back in the carriage. Ming Wu Hall will be responsible for the matters of the guards." Manager Yang was stunned and sneered. Although Wu Ming Hall is responsible for the safety of this journey, they should also listen to the orders of Pill Expansion Hall. "I want to go ahead and take a look. Are you going to stop me?" "Why don't you go ahead and take a look?" The disciple sighed and said, "Manager Yang, please don't blame me. It is very dangerous ahead. I am following Master Kong's orders to be careful and not to disobey orders. If Manager Yang goes ahead, please be careful." After saying that, he stepped aside. Manager Yang's words were extremely correct. Although they were sent by Lord Kong to Vow City this time, there were also matters regarding the Pill Expanding Hall. Therefore, the Wuming Hall had to listen to some of Manager Yang's orders. Although the matter at Rejuvenation Valley was over, the order within the sect did not say to go to Qingting's Pill Expanding Hall. They did not need to listen to the Pill Expanding Hall on the way back. Anyway, they were only responsible for safety and ensuring that the convoy did not meet with any accidents. If Manager Yang went there without permission, it would be the Pill Expanding Hall's fault if something happened. Seeing that the Wuming Hall's disciple had stepped aside, Manager Yang's spirit was lifted. He lifted his long sword and leaped onto the chain bridge. Seeing that Manager Yang's figure had disappeared at the other end of the chain bridge, the Wuming Hall's disciple sneered. "He's just an ordinary disciple of the Pill Expanding Hall. What's so great about him? How dare you meddle in Lord Kong's affairs?" When Zhang Xiaohua returned to the carriage, she was still afraid. When she saw Zhang Xiaohua, she immediately said, Uncle, how is the situation outside? Do we have to die? Zhang Xiaohua shook her head. I'm just going to relieve myself. How would I know? Let's just sit here and wait. After that, she ignored him and sat in the carriage. She released her divine sense and looked around carefully. At this moment, Manager Yang had already rushed across the chain bridge with his sword and was looking around. Following the destroyed flowers and plants by the roadside, Manager Yang effortlessly found Peacock, who was recuperating in the distance. He saw that Peacock was sitting cross-legged with her eyes closed, and there was no one else around. Naturally, he knew that the battle had ended and Lord Kong had won. It was just that he was injured and could not move. Manager Yang went forward, but he did not dare to speak. He was afraid that he would disturb Peacock's recuperation. He only raised his long sword and made a defensive posture, guarding not far away. Although Peacock was recuperating with her eyes closed, her attention was still on the outside. She was afraid that Liang Xingshu and the rest would come back. When she heard that someone was using light body technique, she was first shocked. Then she heard the heavy footsteps and was delighted. It must be someone from her sect. When she saw that it was Manager Yang, she was surprised. Where did the disciples of Wuming Hall go? However, she was in the middle of recuperating. As long as it was her sect's disciples, she was not worried. She closed her eyes and focused on recuperating. After the time to drink a cup of tea, Peacock's recuperation came to an end. She opened her eyes and saw Manager Yang's loyal face. She was very happy and whispered, "Manager Yang." When he heard Lord Kong's words, Manager Yang's face showed a surprised expression. He turned around and bowed. "Lord Kong, how are your injuries?" Peacock smiled. "I'm fine now." "Oh right, where are the disciples of Wuming Hall? Why did you come here alone?" Manager Yang said respectfully. "They are guarding the carriage. They have a mission and dare not leave their post. I am worried about your safety, so I came to take a look." Peacock nodded. "Thank you for your concern. I will remember it." Manager Yang was even more surprised. He bowed deeply. "I don't dare. Lord Kong was injured because of us. It is my duty." Peacock waved her hand and said, "All right, you go over to the suspension bridge and let them come over." Manager Yang came to the other end of the suspension bridge and waved his hand at the disciples who were looking over. The disciple understood and felt relieved. He shouted, "All right, brothers, the danger is over. Lord Kong has let us cross the bridge." When the voice was heard, everyone laughed. The gloomy clouds that shrouded them earlier were gone. Under the arrangement of the disciples of Wuming Hall, a few of them crossed the bridge first. Then, everyone got down from the carriage and covered the eyes of the horses. Following their own carriages, the carriages slowly crossed the suspension bridge one by one. Zhang Xihua's carriage was at the back. Naturally, she was at the back. When they crossed the suspension bridge, Zhang Xihua's clothes fluttered in the wind. Zhang Xiahua looked down at the mountain stream below her feet. She did not dare to look down with her spiritual perception. She had a different feeling in her heart. No wonder the people of the celestial path like to ride the wind and float in the air. The 5 elements escape technique is really uncomfortable. Elder Hu was right. As long as you can cross the sky, who would want to go underground? Not only is it dark underground, it is also very dangerous. When they crossed the suspension bridge, Zhang Xiahua kept Zhu Ming back into the money pouch when no one was paying attention. After crossing the suspension bridge, the people who came out of Wuming Hall all got back into their carriages and were ready to leave. When the disciples of Wuming Hall who crossed the bridge and the disciples who came with the carriages heard that Master Kong was seriously injured, they all went up to greet him. However, the greeting now was very different from the greeting from Steward Yang. Master Kong only nodded coldly and let the female disciple help him into the carriage. When the female disciple hurriedly applied medicine on Peacock's wounds and changed his clothes, Peacock pointed at a disciple of Wuming Hall and instructed, "You ride a fast horse and travel through the night. There is no need to stop on the way. Go to Lake Tianqi and inform the other envoys. If there is anyone who arrives first, report our situation to them and ask them to come to our rescue. I am afraid that the Tenryus sect will attack us again." When the disciple heard this, he did not dare to delay. He quickly packed his things, got on his horse, and rode away. When the other disciples heard this, their faces changed. Peacock saw this and said with a smile, "This time the Tenryus sect sent 3 people to ambush me. They were all seriously injured by me and fled in panic. They are already scared out of their wits. Why would they come back? Moreover, the Tenryus sect is far away at the border. If they send someone else, they will not be able to make it in time. We are almost at Lake Dianchi now. Why should we be afraid of them? I am only making this arrangement to ensure that we are safe. There is no need to be afraid." When the crowd heard this, they calmed down a little. They set off again. Although it was the same as before, the atmosphere had changed. Zhang Xiaohua no longer had the chance to go on duty. She could only stay in the carriage. This day's journey was delayed. Moreover, Peacock was injured and could not rush. When night fell, they could only travel to a remote place and could only set up camp temporarily. Ever since they left Rejuvenation Valley, Zhang Xiaohua also noticed that there were very few towns in the southwest. It was different from the north. Most of the towns were villages. The people who lived in these villages were the natives. Almost all of them did not welcome outsiders. Therefore, if the Cult of Fragrance's convoy could not make it to the prearranged location, they could only camp out in the wild. This was the first time the Cult of Fragrance had set up camp. However, from the skillful movements of these people, they were all professionally trained. They were much better than the people in Huanxi Manor. The Rejuvenation Valley's medicine boys' tents were of course taken care of by themselves. The others did not care. Fortunately, Zhang Xiaohua was strong. He had done this before. Most importantly, he was the son-in-law of Rejuvenation Valley. These 10-year-old medicine boys were very obedient to him. Under his arrangements, the tents were quickly taken care of. This made Manager Yang, who had come over, very surprised. He looked at Zhang Xiaohua in a different light. Of course, if not for Zhang Xiaohua's reminder, he wouldn't have thought of taking a step forward to protect Lord Kong. What kind of person was Peacock? She was an outstanding disciple of the inner sect. If she said that she would remember it, then she would really remember it. In the future, his benefits would be endless. This was all thanks to Zhang Xiaohua. Of course, Steward Yang did not think that Zhang Xiaohua knew the situation. She was just smart, and had a strong ability to make logical deductions. Therefore, after arranging his own affairs, he specially came over to express his concern for Rejuvenation Valley. At the same time, he also expressed his concern for Zhang Xiaohua. Naturally, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't admit that he knew anything and could only respond vaguely. Seeing this, Manager Yang didn't say anything and only said worriedly, "I don't know how many times I've been to Rejuvenation Valley, but I've never encountered such a situation. This is my last mission, so I hope there won't be any problems. I hope it's as Lord Kong said, that my future is safe." Zhang Xiaohua comforted him. "Steward Yang, you are overthinking. If the sky falls, there will naturally be someone tall to hold it up. We are only small pawns. Our lives are worthless. How can they take us seriously?" Steward Yang did not listen. He only shook his head and left worriedly. The next morning, before the incense cult's caravan set off, some people rushed over from the front. It was the place where they were supposed to stay last night. When they did not see the messenger, they received the message from the messenger disciple and hurried over to help. Vote for me. Calm, there are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. -3. Chapter 520. There were not many people who came, but it was very encouraging. Even Zhang Xiaohua felt that the morale today was much higher than yesterday. Smiling in his heart, Zhang Xiaohua continued to be his medicine boy, hiding in the carriage with his eyes closed, comprehending the heavenly Tao and the incantation. The incantation of God guidance to conceal his cultivation level had reached the final stage. As long as he could achieve a breakthrough, he was confident that he could hide it from the incense cult's fiery golden eyes. If he could not achieve a breakthrough before reaching Lake Tianqi, he might have to think of another way. In the following days, the Dragon God sect, which Lord Peacock suspected, did not send anyone to attack them. The incense cult disciples along the way, in order to ensure the safety of the convoy, escorted them safely out of their area of control. Some of the disciples with high martial arts skills were even specially selected by Peacock to participate in the escort team. With more escorts, Zhang Xiaohua left the carriage less. Occasionally, Manager Yang would come over to take a look, but he did not say much. Seeing the worry on Manager Yang's face gradually disappear, he knew that the convoy was getting safer. However, there was one thing that Zhang Xiaohua did not understand. Lord Peacock was severely injured in the last battle. Her internal energy was depleted and her meridians were damaged. Her arms and back were severely injured by the steel knife. The knife not only caused her to lose a lot of blood, it also damaged the meridians in her arms and back. Normally, Peacock would find a quiet place to recuperate. However, every time Zhang Xiaohua used his consciousness to scan Peacock's carriage, he could see her pale cheeks and dispirited expression. She insisted on rushing until she could not take it anymore. She then took out a pill and consumed it. Zhang Xiaohua saw this and wanted to give her the bottle of Yuandan pill. However, he remembered that he had told Manager Yang that he had already given it to Valley Master Nye. If he took it out now, wouldn't he be asking for trouble? This was not the way to flatter someone. Thus, Peacock's injuries did not heal and they continued to travel for almost a month. It was already the end of October, but the weather here did not feel like autumn in the north. There was no autumn wind, no fallen leaves, only green and full of vitality. Moreover, there were many times when they did not see tall mountains, but low and white stone peaks, just like the stone forest they saw before. Of course, this was the real stone forest. Previously, there were only a few stone trees. The change in climate, the change in scenery. Perhaps to others, it was just a touch of nostalgia, but to Zhang Xiaohua, it had a different meaning. Inadvertently, it allowed Zhang Xiaohua to comprehend and understand the heavenly Tao. Hence, Zhang Xiaohua immersed his consciousness into the surrounding environment, wanting to gain a new understanding. The heavenly Tao in his heart seemed to have changed again, with a sliver of vitality. On this day, the caravan continued to travel. The sun was high up in the sky, but it did not feel hot. Zhang Xiaohua had a smile on his face. It was just yesterday that he finally broke through the bottleneck of the chant, completely comprehending the cryptic chant. He was now able to hide his cultivation of the immortal Tao, and even his consciousness at will, without leaving a single trace. Just as Zhang Xiaohua was practicing the chant, his heart skipped a beat. He released his consciousness in front of him. A few miles ahead, there were 4 or 5 white horses, galloping towards them. The riders were dressed like Peacock, with veils covering their faces. Needless to say, they must be the fellow apprentices that Peacock mentioned. Sure enough, when the horses came closer, one of the women was already on top of the horse. She called out, "Senior Kong, are you all right?" Her voice came from afar, causing pain in everyone's ears. Zhang Xiaohua pursed his lips and thought, "This woman looks like a straightforward person. She's almost here, won't you be able to see her soon? Moreover, why don't you learn from Lord Kong and lower your voice a little?" Hearing her junior's call, Peacock immediately came out of the carriage and stood at the front of the carriage. She had not yet recovered her powers, so she could not use her powers to echo. She could only wave her hand to signal that she heard. When the women saw this, they all cheered. They did not even ride their horses, but leaped from their horses and galloped towards the carriage. It did not take them long to reach Peacock's carriage. It was the female disciple at the front who asked loudly, "Senior Kong, how are your injuries? Why didn't you respond just now?" Peacock laughed. "Junior Chen Chen, why are you still so impatient? Master let you go out to gain experience this time precisely because he wanted to sharpen your temperament. But now it seems that the results are very little." Junior Chen Chen laughed. "A leopard cannot change its spots. Master, you know that." I've been like this since I was young, how can I change? Let's not talk about me. How are your injuries? Peacock did not want to go into detail, but when she saw her junior apprentice sister pestering her and the others staring at her, she had no choice but to tell them everything. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. They knew Peacock's cultivation base. She was considered to be one of the best among the inner disciples. That was why she was sent to Vow City. Even she was defeated and almost lost her life. If they were to encounter her, the consequences would be unimaginable. At this time, a petite female disciple who had been listening to the conversation said in a low voice, "Senior Sister Kong, what you said at the end seems to be a legendary illusion formation. I heard that the Righteous Tao Alliance's Auspicious Three Treasures has such an effect. Moreover, the Auspicious Three Treasures were killed by the Heavenly Dragon Sect's Qin Shiwei, and the 3 flags fell into the hands of the Heavenly Dragon Sect. But if the Chiman 3 Talents formation was used by the Tenria Sect, the one trapped should be Senior Kong, not Liang Tsangxiu and the others from the Tenria Sect, right?" Peacock nodded. "Junior Xiaqing is right, I thought so too at the time. But if it was really an illusion array, I should have fallen into it as well. So why was I able to see the real scene outside the array?" Xiaqing laughed. "That's because you didn't enter the formation." Peacock shook her head and told them about the danger. This time, the juniors were speechless. Peacock was in the middle of the 3 of them. If the 3 of them were trapped in the illusion, there was no way Peacock would not be trapped. Peacock laughed lightly. "Forget it, as long as we are out of danger. Let's tell Master about this and let her think about it. They are experienced and knowledgeable, they should be able to find some clues." Then she said, "Thank you for taking the time to come and pick me up. I am very grateful." Chinchin waved his hand and said, "Senior Kong, you are too kind. We have completed our mission and our teams are approaching Dianchi Lake. No matter how bold the Tenria Sect is, I don't think they would dare to cause trouble under the nose of the Fragrance Sect. Let them go slowly. On the other hand, Senior Kong has been seriously injured and it seems that she will not be able to recover. If we don't come and help her, where else can we go?" "Oh, right, Senior Kong, I don't think I have heard of any heavenly kings in the Tenria Sect who are proficient in the sword." Peacock still shook her head. "I tried to sound them out several times, but that Liang Tsangxiu did not reveal anything. He just followed my tone and did not admit or deny it. I can't be sure. Maybe they are the young masters secretly trained by the Tenria Sect." Chinchin scratched his head and said, "Let Master and the others worry about this kind of troublesome matter. We only need to wave our swords and kill the demons." At this time, Xiaqing took out a jade bottle and said, "Senior Kong, you must have used up all your pills. This is the Yuhuandan pill that I always carry with me. Senior Kong, please take it." Peacock did not hesitate and reached out to take it. She said, "This sword is really powerful. It can even hurt the meridians. Although the Yuhuandan pill of the Fragrance Sect has miraculous healing properties, it is still not enough to deal with the power of the sword. It can only maintain its power. I have used up all my pills and that's why I asked you to come." When the Junior Kong sisters heard this, they all took out their pills. Peacock picked a few and put them in her clothes. She smiled and said, "I am relieved that you are all here. Even if that Liang Tsangxiu comes again, he will be defeated by us sisters." "That's right, Senior Kong. The Tenria Sect is too despicable. They used one person as bait while the other 2 lay in ambush. They are so shameless. Sai, what kind of tricks are there in Jianghu? This is just a simple ambush. You don't know, but this time, we encountered something interesting in Don't Worry City." Peacock then told them about how Valley Master Nye of the Rejuvenation Valley used the joust for marriage as a cover for Nye Qianyu in order to attract the enemy's attention. She also told them about how Zhang Xiaohua escorted Nye Qianyu from thousands of miles away. The few female disciples who had never been through the trials of Jianghu listened to the story as if they were listening to a story. They were all stunned. After a while they asked, "Senior Kong, are you telling a story? How can a 15-year-old child be so kind? And this old Nye is really despicable. How could he come up with such a terrible idea?" Peacock smiled and said, "Of course it's true. Even if you want me to make it up, how could I? Besides, this Ren Xiaoyao is in our convo." "What? Right here? Quick, quick, let us see, let us see." Qingqin could not wait any longer. Xia Qing, on the other hand, was attentive and asked, "This Ren Xiaoyao is not staying at the Rejuvenation Valley to be his son-in-law. Why is he here at the Fragrance Cult?" Peacock heard this and knew that it was not good. After all, this was against the rules of the Fragrance Cult, and it was also a matter of the Pill Repository Hall. Although her senior sister was an inner disciple, it was not convenient for her to interfere. Manager Yang had told her to keep it a secret. She was happy to see her junior sister, and accidentally revealed everything. This was against the rules of Jianghu. Qingqin did not know what she was thinking and kept urging her. The others also clapped and cheered. Peacock was helpless and could only say, "You can meet him, but you must swear that this matter is only known to you. You must not tell anyone else, not even Master." Everyone was stunned and looked at each other. "Please vote recommend." -3. Chapter 521. Xia Qing smiled and said, "There must be a reason for Senior Sister Kong to say this. Little sister will naturally agree, but it's not good to hide it from Master, don't you think?" Peacock said, "Of course, I will report this to my master. All you need to do is listen and not say anything." When everyone heard this, they thought that there was no harm in it, and all of them nodded in agreement. Peacock then told Qingqin about how Zhang Xiaohua had joined the Fragrance Cult as a medicine boy. Qingqin clapped his hands and said, "Such a loyal and righteous kid, of course he will join the Fragrance Cult. Oh right, Senior Peacock, you must put in a good word for him in front of Master. Let him become an inner disciple and our junior, what do you think?" Before Peacock could say anything, Xia Qing interjected. "Senior Sister Qin is wrong. This Ren Xiaoyao may be brave and loyal, but he is only 15 years old. Our inner sanctum will definitely not accept him. Furthermore, he is only an alchemy boy from the Dan Sprouting Hall. He is far from the standard of an outer sanctum disciple. Why would Master agree? Senior Apprentice Sister Kong only said it for Master to hear. Why would Master care about this kind of thing?" Qingqin couldn't help but pout when he heard this, and he felt extremely regretful that he couldn't have such a little junior brother. She then went on to talk about Nie Qianyu's loss of composure during their parting and made the girls hush. She kept urging Zhang Xiaohua to come over and meet them. Peacock lifted the curtains and ordered the disciples outside to call Zhang Xiaohua over. The few female disciples from the inner sanctum were all giggling as they peeked their heads out to watch. "She really doesn't look like anything at all." Peacock nodded. "That should be it. Even though Valley Master Nie didn't mention it, he looks like it. Senior Sister Kong, this is Rejuvenation Valley's spirit beast. Valley Head Nie is willing to give it away? Also, you shouldn't let it accompany you." Xia Qing was a little puzzled. Other than the people and things involved in this mission that could be brought back to the fragrant religion, other unrelated things could not be brought along. This was the tacit rule of the fragrant religion, and also the reason why the medicine boy of Rejuvenation Valley had nothing on him. But looking at the sword embryo on the back of the David's deer, there were 2 bags, one big and one small. Yes, there was also the David's deer itself. It seemed to be against the rules. Hearing that, Peacock blushed and thought to herself, "That's right, who knows what's wrong with me? As long as it involves this Ren Xiaoyao, I will always be merciful and let him off the hook." Is it because of the feeling of meeting for the first time? However, her heart skipped a beat. My fellow junior sisters are all here today, and it just so happens that it's their first time meeting Ren Xiaoyao. Let's see if they feel the same way as me. Therefore, she smiled and said, "After hearing about this young man, perhaps I'm a little protective of Nie Qianyu. I always feel that as a woman, if I can help that little girl when she was in danger, and this young man was able to help her out, it can be considered as helping us women return a point or two to men." Xia Qing said softly, "Senior Sister Kong is right. Everyone has the heart to help others. As they were talking, Zhang Xiaohua was led over by the Woman clan's disciple. Peacock saw her and frowned. It seems that only the first time was clear to me. After that, it became fainter and fainter. Now he looks like a normal person. I don't feel anything at all. She then glanced at the other junior sisters. Although they were all wearing veils, they were used to interacting with each other, and could almost ignore them. Peacock did not notice anything strange about them. They did not lose their composure like the first time she met Zhang Xiaohua. Could it be my imagination? Could it be that feeling is the legendary love at first sight? It's gone when we meet again. Peacock was confused. Zhang Xiaohua walked to the front of the horse carriage. Although he had already seen them with his consciousness, he pretended not to know. He bowed to Peacock and said, "Master Kong, why have you called for me?" Peacock smiled and said, "Ren Xiaoyao, these are my junior sisters. They heard about your story and were very curious. They wanted to meet you." Zhang Xiaohua heard and his face was full of fear. He said carefully, "So it's you masters. Greetings." Qinchin was impatient when he heard this. He waved his hand and said, "What master? I just don't like it." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "I'm new here and don't know the rules. A few days ago, I called the guard's disciple my senior brother and was scolded. So I couldn't think of anything to call you, so I just called you masters. Am I right? Master Kong." Zhang Xiaohua was secretly pleased that he had changed the word, little one, to this humble one, without leaving a trace. Then, he complained about someone else. Qinchin did not wait for Peacock to speak and asked, "Let me ask you, Ren Xiaoyao, are you really only 15 years old? How did you grow so tall?" Zhang Xiaohua had a fearless look on his face. He rubbed his chin and said, "Sir, do I look like I'm 18 years old?" Well, this guy pushed the question back. "I didn't say I wasn't 18 years old. You insist that I'm 15 years old. I can't do anything about it." Qinchin smiled and said, "Your face looks like a 15-year-old outer disciple. But your body is similar to a 20-year-old disciple. It's hard to tell, hard to tell. Master." Zhang Xiaohua wanted to say something. Qinchin waved his hand and said, "Don't call me master. I've been out of Dianqi Lake for a few months and I'm sick of being called master." Then he rolled his eyes and smiled. "I'm Qinchin. You can call me Sister Qin. How about that?" "Chen-Chun?" Hearing this name, Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. He immediately thought of the round-faced girl he met 4 or 5 years ago at the martial arts hall of Misty Heights. She was Sister Changa's little tail. At the same time, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly thought of something. He didn't know why Peacock lost her composure when she saw him. Was it because she met the people from Misty's school? She met his second brother? Was that why she recognized him? However, he immediately dismissed this idea. After all, although Zhang Xiaolong and Zhang Xiaohu were biological brothers, the two of them did not look alike. One had a long face, like his mother was Sufei. The other had a round face, like his father, Zhang Kai, and Zhang Xiaohua looked like his elder brother, Zhang Xiaolong, but was quite a bit different from Zhang Xiaohu. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua did not answer, Qinchin was unhappy and said, "What? Am I not worthy?" Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly and said, "It's not that I don't dare, it's just that." Then he looked at Peacock and said, "Master Kong, you see." Peacock also had a headache when it came to this junior of hers. She thought for a moment and said, "You're just a medicine boy from Tuiden Hall. You have nothing to do with us inner disciples. I can't control how you address each other. Moreover, I can control you along the way, but when we get on the boat, it has nothing to do with me. Even if you call me master, I may not respond." Qinchin heard this and laughed and said, "See, even Master Kong has acquiesced. Why don't you call me master?" Zhang Xiaohua was amused and could only go forward and bow. "Greetings, Sister Chen." "Ha!" Qinchin laughed again and said, "Finally, there's a boy taller than me who calls me sister, ha ha ha." Looking at Qinchin's extreme lack of care, Zhang Xiaohua's body swayed a few times, and she barely steadied herself. She thought to herself, "Wow, do you really have to do this? You're a disciple of the inner sect. If you go up and shout, who knows how many male disciples will flatter you and call you sister." Xiaqing saw Qianqian laughing and quickly said, "Senior, calm down, calm down." Peacock also waved her hand and said, "Junior, you're a lady, a lady." The other three also showed a look of disdain. When Qianqian was done laughing, she saw that she was up to no good. She winked and said, "Little brother Ren, since you're my brother, you can't hide anything from me. Tell me how you met your Nie Qianyu and how you sent her back to Rejuvenation Valley." "Oh, right, since I'm your sister, this. Qianqian pointed at Peacock and the rest and said, "Of course, these are your sisters as well. You can't lie to them. Tell us everything that happened along the way. Remember, don't leave out any details, especially if you held the girl's hand or kissed her on the cheek." After that, she fainted. Zhang Xiaohua immediately fell to the ground with a thud. The consequences of calling someone sister were so serious. Peacock and the rest were stunned at first, then they all laughed. When Zhang Xiaohua patted the dust off her body and stood up with a bitter face, Peacock stopped laughing and said, Ren Xiaoyao, please don't blame us. We've been practicing in the sect all this time and rarely go out in the martial arts world. Everything we know about the martial arts world is from hearsay. I've already told them a little about you and Nie Qianyu. Junior Chen saw that you have a chivalrous heart, and was very happy, so she asked you to call her sister. This will only be good for you and no harm, so don't feel burdened. Actually, I've always wanted to hear from you personally. If you have time, can you tell me in detail?" Zhang Xiaohua finally understood why Qianqian, whom she had never met, asked her to call her sister. So that was why. Women in this world really needed to be coaxed and pampered. Who knew when it would pay off? Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua cupped her hands and said, "Master Kong." Qianqian immediately stopped her. "Master Kong, call me Sister Kong. After a few days, I won't be a master anymore. Just call me that for now." This. Zhang Xiaohua dared not make the decision without permission. Peacock smiled and said, "This title is only used in private. It has nothing to do with seniority in the sect, but it doesn't matter." "Yes, Sister Kong," Zhang Xiaohua replied. When Peacock heard this, her heart skipped a beat, but she felt very comfortable. It seemed that only when Zhang Xiaohua was of the same status as her, she felt natural. Even a simple title was the same. After that, naturally, the rest of them also called her sister. However, Zhang Xiaohua clearly felt that although the other four were curious, their tone was indifferent. It was just for show and could not be taken seriously. Please vote, recommend, comment and read more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. -3. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.